And we are live.
The Fantasmagorium is proud to present Set to Stun, a Star Trek show that is an irregular one. Stardate 20233.09. The first 4 episodes of Star Trek Picard Season 3 have dropped. This is when we get a movin', so they say. So let's see if our glorious panel agrees. Your landing party for today is Admiral Steve Foley, who will see if we are moving past episode 4. Lieutenant Antiderivative will be here momentarily, I promise everyone who is a fan, and she will be going to her happy place once again. And I am Chief Scotty R37 here with the weird veering in the middle of the road as it does continue. Without further ado, energize. How are you, Steve?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I don't want to give away too much before Jill gets here, but we do have to have a conversation. First four episodes of this season, as you were saying throughout our review so far, this is the first act of a movie.
It is, and this is so now that we're on episode 4, and no shocker that I like this episode. I think this is probably the strongest episode of the series so far. It's officially like this season more than 1 and 2, because I didn't make it past 3 episodes of the other 2. You know what I mean? As far as wanting to watch them and liking the season, I knew by episode 3 and episode 3, I think it's 3 in both cases, maybe 4 in season 2, that it was not good.
Right.
I no longer liked what I was seeing. It started going way downhill after the first couple episodes. So this, I'm officially in. So this is officially, my favorite season of Picard. Super low bar, obviously. So that's not saying much. But this season is light years better than the first 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, the only detriment, well, not the only detriment, but one of the biggest detriments for this is the previous 2 seasons. And people have been throwing around TNG 2, which I don't think it is. It's not Star Trek The Next Generation 2. I would say that it's Star Trek the movies, or at least Star Trek Nemesis 2, in terms of tone and characterization.
A little. I can see where you get that from. I mean, I don't think it's definitely not a direct sequel like to Nemesis. And the tone is New Trek, but I don't know if it's even that as dark as Nemesis.
No, well, and one of the best things about this over Nemesis is that it's being handled by someone who knows the characters and knows the history. Right. Although, you know what? My one message to Terry Matalas: stop naming planets out after yourself, you narcissistic F. We got Metalis Prime. We got Metalis 4. We're probably going to get Orion Metalis. We're going to get the Metalis.
Well, dude, if there's a Metalis Prime, there are more in the system.
Well, and that's the funny thing.
The system.
And that's the funny thing, that because I watch these through extracurricular means. I don't have a subscription to Paramount Plus. Take of that what you will. But I watch it with Jill. We basically Zoom on it. And I said that at the time. And she was like, well, if there's a Metalis Prime, there might as well be a Metalis 4. And I was like, oh, my stars, you're actually giving credence. So maybe Jill...
because I mean, if there's a Prime, there's other Metalis. And to be fair, he didn't name the Prime that was bestowed. But I mean, come on, I get it. But hey, listen, just like I think I mentioned this on our first show, that Christian Harloff had a planet named after him in Star Wars canon too. So
Really?
That's cool. Yeah, Harloff Minor.
Well, and I think that was also the case with Manny Boffins, is a comic book character based off of, or at least visually based off of RMB, Robert Meyer Burnett.
Yeah. So I mean, those kind of little things don't bother me. I don't think they really bother you. I think it's just nice to bring up too. And
Well,
you have fun with them.
It's just funny that, like, when you're bringing up different planets, that you would just have two. Like, and I guess you're right. Metallus Prime, Metallus 4. I guess there could be 8 Metalluses.
Yeah.
They're, the Brady Metallus.
Metallus system. Cluster, whatever.
But I do have my criticisms, and like upon first viewing, I have my science criticisms, my Starfleet criticisms, and then upon the second viewing, when I go through to sort of find the slides, for everything, that's when I get the character aspect of a little bit more, because I'm sort of just mechanically going through what's going on. And it's like, what are the beats of what's happening? And then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well, this isn't necessarily as egregious as my knee-jerk reaction is, because it is building off of seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, and we kind of touched on that. Not kind of. We actually really did in our first episode. Is that, you know, it's really unfortunate that he got saddled with a lot of bad stuff that came before him. You know, but I mean, it is what it is. I think so far we're doing a good job with what we've been given to work with. Right. I think in the long run, I think there's a lot of people, that a lot of Star Trek fans that want a return to the episodic instead of the long form storytelling. So if you're looking for that in this, I mean, you're going to be disappointed every time, because that's just not what this is. So I think there's a disappointment there, but there's also a disappointment with everything that's, we've talked about this before, but there's a disappointment with everything that's happened since 09, there's just, and I get it. So if this is, if this isn't for you, it's not for you, but I will say, anybody that's, still hanging in there, the show is getting better. I think, it's definitely better than the first 2 seasons. This actually feels like it's going somewhere. It feels like, it feels like we have at least a direction. Whether you like that or not it doesn't matter whether you like the direction or not. At least we have one. Where I didn't feel that we had that in the first 2 seasons, although they started out felt like they were going to go away, and then they just totally didn't go anywhere. They stalled. And then went in weird directions. But I do think this season so far is, the first 4 episodes have been good. They've been solid. Can you nitpick them? Sure, you can I can nitpick any television show. Sit there and just go through everything that I think sucks. But so that, I mean, you can always do that. You can do that with everything. But just kind of, sitting back and taking in what we've been given, it's not bad. It may not be your Star Trek, and it may not be great Star Trek, but it's certainly better than what we've been given to date.
Well, and I one thing that I sort of noticed upon second viewing of this one this evening is that, while you say it's not episodic and that it's not, it's just not the nature of what this show is, I found it to be, if I wanted to, because again, as I've said, it's middle of the road. There are things that I'm just like, no. There are things that if it were any other series in terms of giving credence and forgiveness to, because this is essentially what they should have done from the onset, but we can't talk about that. We have what we have.
Totally agree.
But I find that these 4 episodes, put in the context of previous Star Trek before 2017, just in terms of televised Star Trek, this is a decent 2-parter.
Okay, yeah,
spread out over 4 episodes,
yeah.
And the people who are saying, like, and again, we have 6 more episodes to go through. we have a two-parter with 4 episodes, and there are people like it took too long, but as you've mentioned in terms of table setting and getting
Yeah.
people back up to speed, so it's like, okay, we're going to focus on this, not that.
Yeah.
And we are moving forward in a more traditional Star Trek way, I would think, at least with characters that we care about from the past, while also introducing characters that we can care about, such as Shaw. And while I'm not on a first name or last name basis with the bridge crew, I recognize them all.
Yes.
And I know Tavine, I know LaForge, I think it's Muras, and I don't know the other, the engineer on.
I'll tell you what. I don't know their names either, but I recognize them. They're starting to become familiar. You know, when the camera pans to them. Also, what I loved about this episode, we'll talk about this more in depth as we go through the slides, but we're back to Star Trek that where the people on not even just the bridge crew, but the people on the Titan are actually good at their jobs. Right? They're actually really good at what they do. This episode in particular shines a light on that. Just it's kind of part woven into the kind of the tapestry of the episode is that kind of you know, we're actually good at this. Let's get back to what we're good at, you know, and get us the hell out of this mess, right? We haven't had a lot of that in new Trek, especially in these shows. It doesn't seem like it's the best of the best. It doesn't seem like these are, you know, are the top of their game. So I like that. I did like that. Another thing I really liked about this episode is how funny it was. I laughed out loud at least 3 times that I can remember. I think it was actually 4 times. So that was very, very surprising. Not that I didn't laugh out loud a couple times in the other episodes. Did you freeze or did I freeze? I don't know who's frozen.
Oh, that's right. I can add myself to the stream. Hello. Apologies for my tardiness.
Hello.
Am
I frozen? Here's Jill.
Yeah, there we go. Hello, I'm here.
Yeah.
Although I probably should have.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're here, Scotty. You were frozen there for a while.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Hey, sorry for being late. The cadets needed some extra training.
No worries. No worries
at all. The analogy. Which part did you laugh out loud at, Steve?
None.
Steve, not Jill. Jill. Yeah. So it was several points. I thought the Shaw was great in this episode, by the way. Todd Stashwick is killing it as Shaw, in my opinion. But yeah, I laughed out loud a few times. I thought the jokes landed really well. I didn't expect them. For some reason, I expected this to be. For some reason, I was going into this thinking it was going to be a more action-packed kind of episode, but it was very, very different than my expectation in a good way for me, because you know I do like the drama and the dialogue and I thought you know me in comedy, Scotty. It's got to be good or it doesn't land right for me. And I thought the comedy was good. Laughed out loud 2 or 3, maybe 4 times in this episode. Which is cool.
I know people were, and I know you were one of them, were looking forward to the possibility of either a Riker on the Titan or a Shaw on the Titan. Totally see that. I totally see that as being a possibility. Or if they were to do it, I wouldn't be averse to it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I think it seems to me that that's where they're probably going to head. And to tell you the truth, I don't know who I'd pick to captain the Titan, whether it be Riker or Shaw at this point, because I do like Shaw's character so much. And he is starting to do the turn a little bit. He's not full on, hey, I'm part of the gang now, but you could tell that turn worked. And we'll see, how much more we get of Shaw. I don't know how this is going to, how the Titan plays in or how Shaw may play into the rest of the season. But I think that's probably where they're going to go.
Despite how uninspiring and inconsistent I find Shaw to be, it is his ship, and so he does have the right to be captain.
Sure.
He just gave up his reins because his leg is broken.
Yeah.
I don't know why legs are broken for so long in the 25th century. There you go.
Well, in terms of 25th century medicine, I was curious about that myself. But Jill, overall,
drama, baby, for the drama.
I
know it doesn't work. It doesn't work right.
Doesn't it? Exactly. And I get what it was, but it, they're going to do what they're going to do. Part of the reason for the optimistic future and the technology of everything is to see how quickly things can change. Like, it's not necessarily the technology that makes people better. It's the people that make it better, and technology just helps. But they've done this before on Star Trek before. I believe the Mintakans shot Picard with an arrow and he had a sling. And there was a nitpicker's guide where people were like, nope, no sling.
Yeah.
So it's happened.
In one episode, a hypo spray and some kind of weird little cast thing for 20 minutes would work, and then 4 episodes later, you got the whole episode, you got a cane or something. Yeah, it's all it serves the narrative, and that's fine. I'm not that nitpicky about it, unless it really contradicts a story point where you're like, wait, that just can't be right.
Mm-hmm.
Then it it rears its ugly head. It's hard, especially in these long. Not talking about this series in particular, but if you're deep into season 5 of a 7-season, run, it's hard to keep that continuity and keep everything,
Well, the overall theme of this episode is teamwork, and I would buy that a little more if Riker would have taken responsibility at the end of the last episode instead of assigning blame to his crewmates when he was the one who made the decision.
And that was the end of the last episode, and I was thinking about that as well on second viewing, and sort of while I was mentally chewing on it, is the very beginning of this episode is Picard is Riker walking in and saying, "Hey, I was wrong." That Picard confronted Riker with.
Yeah, they're both apologizing, but Scotty, you are cutting in and out a bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. All right, well then I'm going to close that, and I'm going to try and solo this. Okay,
sure, that's a theme for this entire series is the apologies of Picard, and now there's apologies of Riker now.
Well, and this
both really.
This is also a new situation of seeing Riker and Picard as well, because they're on relatively, they're more colleagues as opposed to superior and subordinate, which is something new to their dynamic and their ability to disagree and get emotional. We were talking about this earlier, Jill, just in terms of early Next Generation and Roddenberry's vision of no negative interaction between crew members. All of the conflict would come from without.
Mostly, there can be internal conflict, but it's intelligent and well thought out, and more like debate club, more logical.
Yes,
and comes from a place of problem solving. So there's not. He doesn't say no conflict.
No, yes, I think it's exactly what he said.
No, it's in the Bible. It's exactly as I described. There can be conflict, but it must come from a place of logic.
So,
not precise words.
That might have been written like that. But if you listen to showrunners from back then and people involved with the show,
yes, they're mistaken.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they run the show. They mistaken maybe according to Hoyle, but they're not mistaken in the way they felt, and the way they felt was we definitely can't, we're not allowed to do this, right?
Yeah, but the exact wording of the Bible is different.
But they're what?
The exact wording in the Bible would be different, just in terms of, and
The writer's guide for people who don't know, that Gene Roddenberry wrote.
This is.
Oh, I really want to hear Scotty's concern.
I know.
This is going to be difficult to mediate because I'm frozen and roboting all over the place. Let's see if there we go. All right. Now let's see if I can do this without the camera on. Sorry, Steve, you're the only guy who gets to smile. No, and according to the Bible, yes, and I have heard from the showrunners that it was a very difficult writing proposition when it came to internal conflict, because most of the conflict had to come from the evil admirals or the Klingons who would show up and be against what the treaties were that were pre-established in Next Generation, but not necessarily cemented into canon. It was something that was there, and now we're seeing more emotional conflict with that, but also it's something that
precisely, Scotty. I'm sorry for interrupting, but that's exactly what the Bible says: intellectual rather than physical or emotional conflict. We've received some interesting analysis of possible alien civilizations, socio-economic speculation, which seemed brilliant to us, but the characters were sitting and talking rather than feeling, moving, and doing. They also fell or Gunsmoke and just whatever rule that is, would the basic story stripped of the science fiction aspects make an entertaining episode.
And I understand that completely, and when applied to like the first season, and I understand it's from the Bible, from the first season or the first few seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where you were dealing with coworkers as opposed to the people who had known each other for 40 years and were now reacting to each other as peers, equals, friends, or family, where that is being introduced into their conflicts. If we are to sort of observe the Titan on its own, they're all in, well, except for between Shaw and Seven, that is more an emotional response based on Shaw's biases towards the Borg, obviously, as we get into in this episode. But I do sort of forgive it a little when it comes to the crew of the Enterprise D, simply because they are interacting like they've known each other for 40 years.
Well, and Shaw's objections are coming from a more intellectual place. I was here at the battle, and this is the effect it had on me. And that's why it's essentially a direct mirror of the same kind of conversation that Picard had with Sisko, which is conflict done the right way with instruction.
Yes. Preoccupied somewhat. You guys will be Jill, what are your impressions of the first 4 episodes now that you have seen them?
It continues to be a story that follows a logical progression. Terry knows how to make a story. The dialogue isn't quite up to what I would expect from people from the 25th and 24th centuries from the Star Trek universe, but he's trying. But I don't know. It's still a dark dystopia. The lights are off.
Well, and yes, I did
a few moments in this episode.
Yes. And well, and as I was mentioning to Steve earlier on, and I think I mentioned this to you while we were watching the episode, this feels like a decent 2-parter in the last 4 episodes.
Yeah, you can definitely pare down a lot of the drama into what should be on screen.
Right. But with these 4 with these 4 episodes boiling off some of the water of it, and then with the conclusion of it, it does feel self-contained and somewhat resolved in terms of the tale of Picard rescuing Crusher from the nebula.
Yes.
Which, and as Steve said, in terms of people wanting a more episodic feeling from Star Trek, when you look at these 4 episodes, no matter how expanded they may be, there is still a movie of a story, or a first act of a movie of a story, with the potential to move forward to something interesting, while also being mired within the trappings of modern new Trek filth, whatever, however you wish to describe it.
And of course, the crutch of all of the member berries.
The member berries have always been there.
Always.
Yeah. And that's, I can understand. I'm a big sort of observer of jangly keys, and I don't like the jangly keys, and in this one it hasn't been that egregious, except, again, like, I'm trying to pare down, because I think it was last week with the introduction. No, it was 2 weeks ago, when there was something, and there was a musical cue from Star Trek 2 that I thought was terrible, and that was a nitpick of epic proportions on my part. But I still think the use of the First Contact theme is a jangly key that doesn't necessarily apply. There are other things that are just references to the universe in which this story takes place that I wouldn't necessarily chalk up to being jangly keys.
Well, then we're also thrown right into Member Berry City, though, with the flashback device, which is Terry's way of saying, I know Star Trek, look at me, recite episodes of TNG. Then Terry ties it in with the family drama with Jack in order to flip the lovely notion of having a Starfleet family into some kind of message, but I'm not sure what that is, because Picard at that point doesn't know that he had a family, a son. So what kind of answer was Jack expecting? Since Picard says Starfleet is his family, Beverly is Starfleet, so it's not like he's excluding her. So I'm not too sure what the point of the flashback was, other than to say, look at these old episodes, everybody. Remember Darmok? And now the cadets actually care about Picard and they know him. Whereas, in previous seasons, they're like, who are you? Picard.
Sorry. Yes. Well, yeah, actually, that's, in terms of the continuity of it, that's an excellent point. I didn't even think about that one. But again, it is, well, the trappings of the first 2 seasons. If this were any other show, yeah, it is unfortunate. And if it weren't for the abysmal nature of the first 2 seasons and the desire of the current showrunner to hand wave away a lot of what has happened, like, this would be unforgivable in other shows.
And as far as the flashback, there, I don't see anything wrong with having flashbacks. It's a device that's used in almost all television series, especially if they go long enough.
I don't think it's specifically the use of flashbacks.
But here's the problem, dude. And I'll tell you right. This is exactly what would have been said if if Terry had made up some other adventure. It would have been, it was a perfect time for him to speak about one of the adventures that we already know about from the original series, and he just blew it. He could have talked about this, he could have talked about that, he could have talked about this, instead of just making up something that nobody knows about. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well,
I think erring on the side of, okay, let's tell a story about something that everybody knows from the season was a good way to handle that flashback. I mean, it's a good story. Obviously, it's one that they would know about. That's something they probably teach at the academy.
Actually, I do suppose that they actually do start with a new story that is not a member berry, one that never existed in the Star Trek universe, which is Picard visiting the Hirogen Voyager aliens somehow. I guess they found a portal or a wormhole or something, because how do they get from the Delta Quadrant?
They do ask that in the episode. They do say, did you ever find out how they got to this quadrant? They do say it as sort of one of those unseen adventures. So I didn't mind that reference.
But it makes me think, oh man, it would be a lot more fun to see that episode, and that happens twice. Like, I'd rather see that than this.
I think expanding upon the history of the crew of the Enterprise without necessarily bringing, like, if you're going to complain about member berries and then have expansion of the universe with original stories that were seen off screen, it's sort of 6 of 1. Like, which, as I hate to agree with Steve in terms of, not hate to agree with Steve. I love agreeing with Steve. No, but like in terms of damned if you do or damned if you don't. And the reason I say I hate to say.
Well, I'm not complaining about the Herodians. I'm just saying that
hate
it would be more
to agree
fun.
with you is not.
I think Scotty froze again.
See.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So no, I mean it's obvious that Terry Matalas is going to, if given the option,
I'm okay.
He's going to refer.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's going to refer to Star Trek, and I don't think it's a, hey, look at me, you know, I know more about Star Trek than you. I think he's a genuine fan.
Oh, I didn't say that.
No. But I'm just saying. I don't think he's like, hey, you know, I know more about Star Trek than you. I'm going to throw this here and I'm going to do this here. I think he's just genuinely when he's writing these episodes or writing the series, the season as a whole, you know, he's just gonna err on the side of, yeah, this is a perfect time to bring up it might even be one of his favorite episodes. I don't know, the Darmok episode, and so I don't begrudge him that, and I don't think that was a horrible misstep at all. I think it was good. I think I didn't have any problem with
it. No, it's more fluff though.
More what?
It's more fluff than substantial.
Well, and how do you define substantial?
Well, you know, something that actually plays into the story, and all it does is play into the drama of the story, which I'm not too interested in.
Okay, the drama of the story, I just don't understand how, like, when watching a television show.
Well, no, I told you exactly what it was earlier. I said Terry ties it into the drama of Jack to flip over the notion of having a Starfleet family into some kind of accusation to Picard, but it doesn't really make any sense because Picard didn't know about Jack. So the drama itself is kind of wishy-washy.
I don't think so. I think
and that's my opinion.
Yeah. I think it definitely speaks to how someone who doesn't know their dad has either intentionally by his own actions said, I don't want to know him, or otherwise, if you know, we've seen this before, that, you know, they'll sneak into a you know, a conference or a setting where their parent is there, and I think he was genuinely curious, and I think it played out in the end. I think it played out the way he wanted it to play out.
Well, and I yeah, well, and in terms of the way that the show has been structured, and just as a heads up for everyone who's watching, thank you everyone who's watching. Thank you, Kyle, for being here. Skogly, Dalek, Daniel's Hot Topics, Lemon, thank you for being here. Hakeem, thank you. It's a pleasure to see everybody here. Oh, and also I would be remiss if I didn't say hi to Daniel's Hot Topics. I know we usually do the slides, but my internet is so desperately unstable right now that it won't let me share my screen. So I think this will just be a general discussion on this week's episode, and hopefully we'll be firing on all thrusters for next week. But if you haven't seen the episode, I highly recommend it, or just to be able to have context for what we're talking about. And with this, in terms of the drama, the escalation of the conflict between Riker and Picard, and how invested Riker was in Picard discovering his son, escalated Riker's reminding of the loss of his son.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of this episode, you find out that there is a parallel between the funeral of Thaddeus Riker and the gravity well in which the Titan finds itself in now.
Which I will admit is very heavy-handed in these first 4 episodes. The whole the regret. Don't wait to talk to your son. Don't wait to get to know him. It's a little heavy-handed, but I think in the long run, that was the narrative that they really not only because I don't think he wrote all 3 episodes, but I think he wrote 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken. But it seems like that's what the writers, I'll just call them the writers as a whole, we're trying to convey, that this is the regret and getting older. I think it's also about the maturity of these 2 men looking back on their lives, looking back on seeing themselves in younger people around them. So you get a lot of that, and I think that kind of that tells a story in these first 4 episodes. Hopefully, now that's kind of, I don't know that it's going to go away, but the crux of it, the main thrust, if you will, of that arc is where I think we turn the corner on that, and hopefully that kind of, we can get on with the rest of the show. Obviously, it seems to me that Jack is going to be a part of this show going forward, that his time is not over. So maybe get more interaction there, but I don't think it'll be as heavy-handed as it has been up until this point. I think they just really want to drive that home, with the parallels between Riker and his son and Picard and his son.
Well, and I it's the setups that have been provided so far. I don't think that Riker feels as old as Picard, obviously, because Riker is not as old as Picard.
Right.
There is definitely that, but I don't think it's Riker's age that is weighing on him. It is still the loss of his son, and the emotional distance that he's putting between him and his family to try and avoid the pain of losing his son, and then being indignant towards Picard for something that he lost, Riker. And it's like, you're not taking advantage of this, and you really should.
Yeah.
And there's resentment, while also that fear of loss that was alluded to. And if you take it as in reference to modern television, usually it's all dropped at the same time. You binge it and we're done in a weekend. That works as get off my bridge to, remember that thing you said? Yeah, sorry, I was a dick.
Yeah. Right.
And that takes place in a matter of 15 minutes in this in world.
Right. And so I'm left wondering and I think I might have brought this up in the first episode, our first episode, but I'm left wondering now, and it really hit me hard about halfway through this episode. Should I have waited for it all to drop? Because it seems like this is a better binge than a week to week. So I don't know, and I won't know obviously until the end, but it's interesting.
Well, and going back to, and I'm just going to keep talking about how the things that I said were awesome. Going back to it being a decent 2-parter or the first act of a movie, one of the thoughts that was in my head is that they're going to make a trilogy. It's going to be a season that is a trilogy. And this is part 1. Then we're going to get part 2, and then we're going to get the conclusion in part 3. And that's going to happen over the course of 10 episodes.
Yes.
Apparently, the last 2 episodes are the finale. So we're going to have part 1 is 4 episodes, part 2 is 3 episodes, and part 2 is 3 episodes, and part 3 is 2 episodes.
Correct.
And that's how I think it's going to basically play out.
Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. Yeah.
We had setups and payoffs for Act 1.
Yeah.
And everything is resolved except for the dangling threads of Raffi and Worf.
Yeah.
Jack's red door and Vadic.
Yeah.
Vatican, the Changelings. Those three things will move forward throughout the series, but we're pretty much okay. Riker's dealt with Troy and Kestra, their estrangement, and the loss of Thaddeus somewhat. He's come to peace with it. If he hasn't completely ignored it now, it's not just completely gone away, but he's accepted it as being a part of him. And I don't think he's going to be like, but Thaddeus, every time he sees Jack anymore.
Yeah. So, hopefully we're past that, because I think we're done with that. At least I am. I've had enough of that.
Well,
and I think at the end of the episode, when he's talking with Deanna, I think for sure that kind of puts the cap on it, right? It felt to me like, okay, we're dealing with this. We dealt with part of it. We're dealing with it, and the rest of it can be dealt with off screen. I'm hoping, you know what I mean, going forward. That's
or just be able to reference it without it necessarily becoming an overarching character arc.
Right.
Overarching character arc, whatever.
What did you think? Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What did you think about the when Vadic, a changeling, I suppose, cut her hand off, and that became part of the communication device?
Can't say I was thrilled with it.
Me neither.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I accepted it for what it was. Yes. And I get it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't thrilled with it. It didn't. I mean, it kind of makes sense and kind of doesn't at the same time. It's kind of this. I'm in this weird limbo about it. So yeah, what did you think?
Well, and I'm confused by it more than anything else. Like, I don't know if Vadic is a changeling. I don't think she is, because she had to cut off her hand as opposed to just releasing the
so what
changeling.
Is that? But what does that mean, bro?
We'll find out. We won't. Like, I don't know. That entire sequence I thought was very, very strange, simply because when Vadic gets out of her chair, she walks 5 feet back to either a communication station or just a table, not established whatsoever. And the changeling head floats there and says, "You are expendable. Your crew is expendable. The ship is expendable. Go get Crusher, Jack Crusher." The entire crew is on the bridge.
Yeah.
Sitting there. She's been saying all of her orders in English, or at least translated for us. And the clicky people have been clicky, and she understands them. I wouldn't necessarily be a member of that pursuit force.
Right?
Yeah, that is really weird. Cut your wrist and part of your arm is revealed that your prosthetic is a changeling who floats in the air.
Okay, maybe that's where I didn't. That's a good observation, Jill, because maybe that's where I only watched the episode once, so it felt like she cut off her arm, but maybe it is a prosthetic. That makes more sense than because Odo could just give you part of himself, right, in a little glass tube.
Yeah, right? But he wants it back.
But he does want it back. But she had to cut. So I'm like, is it like inside of her? And then when it completely came off, I'm like, wait, so this is weird, and it doesn't make sense, and I don't understand why you need this as a communication device. Was that Scully, whatever the hell that was, skull thing? Was that the splinter group of changelings? Was that their communication to their link? I'm hoping, obviously, if they never come back to that, that's going to be a huge red flag for me. But hopefully they'll explain it when it needs to be explained. But that was one of those what the hell's going on here moments for me.
Yeah, I was hoping for some deeper character growth for her, but it turns out she just taking orders from this changeling defector bad guy straight out of a Star Wars movie.
Yes, I did, and I think that's why if you follow us on the tweets, that's why I did sort of Star Wars, Patrick Stewart, episode 4. But
I really see that.
it did sort of feel like the Emperor or something, and it feels like the head of that particular evil link. I honestly, when she walked over to the table and started to cut herself, I thought it was like, oh, you're going to show us that you are a changeling. So I guess she's not a changeling. I don't know.
She's not a changeling. I almost thought that she was going to explain the portal weapon to us because she started to, but then all she says is that it uses gravimetric distortions, which is a classic Star Trek get out of jail free card for many anomalies and stuff. Yeah. But while I can't knock it for that, that's one of the things. Oh, sorry.
Is that? Oh, right. That's Red Dwarf. But yeah, and that was odd. One of the things, Steve, how did you feel about once? And this is something that bothered me about the first half of the episode. Is when
you know why it bothered you? Because you're just a dipshit from Chicago.
Well, we'll get to the awesomeness of Todd.
So those were two laugh out loud moments for me.
Well, but the thing is that when he says, and people have been saying, "I'm just a dipshit from Chicago," was a hilarious line. That was in the middle of a very emotional speech, so I didn't find it funny.
No, that wasn't fun. The Picard,
second time when Picard says it, yes, I thought that was funny. But the things that really bothered me about the first half of the episode were the ability for everyone to be resigned to their own death, which seemed to be somewhat antithetical to the nature of every episode of Star Trek I've ever seen. Is once you identify a problem, you work through it, even if you think there's going to be death.
Right. Which I think, sorry to interrupt, but which I think further informs more of that, dystopian after all the wars. We're in a weird state of the state that we've never really gotten a good handle on yet or explanation for.
And while I'm still and I'm with you to a certain extent, I'm still curious about the nature of the galaxy, which we haven't fully fleshed out yet. And I would be first in line to check something out that takes place after Nemesis or after the end of Voyager. But there are certain constants that I like in my Starfleet officers, and rolling over and waiting for their ultimate demise, I don't think is a thing that any Starfleet crew has done or would do.
Yes. I agree with that. Although it wasn't instantaneous rollover, right? This is 3 episodes. We've tried everything we can to get away from this psycho. Right. And we're stuck in this gravity well and with no power, and we're I think it's kind of resigning to the facts instead of just it wasn't an immediate rollover. But you are correct. I mean, until your last breath, you should be fighting to get the hell out of there. And they did not do that in this episode. Well, until the end.
And still trying. And that's one of the things the second thing that really bothered me about this episode, even though it is nice to watch a modern Star Trek episode that will slow down and have a conversation as opposed to continuously being like, pew, pew, wee, whiz, bang.
Agreed.
Cry, 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 cry.
Right. Hug, cry.
Yeah. Is in the middle of this with no power, they decide to turn on the holodeck. And I'm like,
then properly explain why they can, which was
improperly explained, in my opinion. And I know we're not supposed to review the thing that they should have said, but I think that it would have been perfect if they had tweaked it just slightly. Or maybe this is a characterization of Picard trying to put someone at ease. But I would have preferred it if they said that the holodeck has its own power cell to be used as a backup emergency science lab. Much like in The Offspring. I think it was The Offspring.
Yeah, what I meant was the fact that they did it, not that what they said was correct. That's what I meant. That's what.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was, and again, that's one of those up in the air things. I don't know if it's nitpicky. I found it to be, and when they said we're out of all energy, I wish someone had said, like,
well, not all energy.
Did we tap the holodeck energy?
Right.
Did we get the holodeck cells?
Apparently, it doesn't take much to run a holodeck.
Apparently.
Anymore.
Well, and
I
don't know what the power consumption on a holodeck is.
I don't know either.
In joules or newtons,
or Calicams or
Calicams is a unit of distance, Steve. You
know
that.
Right. That's right.
But yeah, those were the main things that bothered me. But I was not bothered what happened on the holodeck.
No,
which is the emotional conversation that Shaw outlining his experiences at the Battle of Wolf 359.
And I thought all that, the whole holodeck thing, first starting with just Picard and Jack was good, and obviously when Shaw comes in, it elevates to something that I thought was really outstanding. Plus, Todd Stashwick's performance so far in this series is top notch.
And and this is a testament to, well, you have to keep watching in all of this, is that you start off the show this season and it's like, oh my god, Shaw is kind of a dick, but he's kind of right, and Kirk and Riker are the evil admirals that you would get in older Next Generation or original series or any Star Trek. It's like when the admirals show up, you know they're going to screw things up. And I like that we as an audience are on the side of both. Like, we understand that Riker and Picard are screwing up everybody's galaxy and how Shaw is protecting his ship. Now, Shaw's a prick to Seven.
Yeah.
But I even like that resolution.
Whatever. He says whatever. Like, yeah, dude. He just doesn't give a fuck at that point, man. He's done.
Well, like, 4 hours to live.
Whatever. Awesome. He's got good little one-liners and just good. He's got good dialogue in this episode. His dialogue is good.
Yeah, I guess when Captain Shaw tells his story about Wolf 359, that is definitely reminiscent of Sisko's first time meeting Picard.
Yep.
Basically being anger, but instead of anger, Shaw he's very busy. He has some very realistic survivor's guilt.
Yep.
About being chosen for the escape pod from the others. But then it kind of, well, I guess since he keeps doing it, I'll just have to get over it. But I kind of am taken out of the 25th century again when he uses modern day slang, calling himself a dipshit. And then also a grease monkey, which no one else in Star Trek has ever called themselves except for Tom Paris. And that is because he literally was one on the holodeck.
Okay. But the term still is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's a modern term.
It is
more modern than.
Well, but Star Trek has always used a colloquial isms, and from way far back too. So that technically shouldn't have been there, right? If you wanted to say that we're not using those kind of terminology, it's always done that.
Well, it's like using I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm in the middle of the road on this. I don't like it when it's used excessively, and I think that modern Trek in general is guilty of using like our vernacular very freely to try and bridge the gap between modern audience and what Star Trek is, and it's much more formal.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. And in fact, I found myself in this episode. There's a couple times where Shaw curses, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know that we need this much cursing. And I'm, bring the filthy. I love the filthy, right? Cursing and nudity and all that. I don't mind it. It's just it seemed, and maybe it was just this episode, it seemed a little excessive. And maybe I'm just not used to it in Star Trek. I'm still trying to get used to cursing in Star Trek, because it's just not, it doesn't feel natural to me. I'm not it's not a sticking point where I'm like, oh, I'll never watch the show again. It's just kind of, it bothered me this episode a bit.
The only reason, and I heard that there are two, they say fuck twice throughout the series. And they said that one of them was an improvisation, but they decided because of who it was and where it was in the scene, it was acceptable and they would leave it in. And I think that this is the one that was improvised because of the way that it is used. I'm a big fan of using swears when it emphasizes something or sounds good.
Sure.
If you choose a word to emphasize what's going on, I'm happy with it, but it better sound lyrical. Swears are the best to be lyrical. And just to finish my point, like when Picard says we spent however many fucking grueling hours and I watched it like 2 or 3 times and I'm like, where does the fuck fit in this sentence? And the answer is grueling is the swear in that sentence. Dropping fuck in that sentence doesn't make it any more impactful. The most impactful, and this is just sentence structure from a person who likes to use words, is fuck doesn't fit before grueling and it doesn't fit after grueling. It's just Picard saying fuck, or it's Patrick Stewart saying fuck because he's either tired that day or he wants to punch it up and he doesn't know how to swear. So I found that, but I don't mind.
Double dumbass on you.
Double dumbass on you. They say dipshit in Star Trek 4 as well. I'm fine. But
of course, that's because they're learning it from that time. So that's the right.
There's actually a reason for it.
For sure. But like I'm honestly, shit at this point in time in the 21st century doesn't even feel like a swear. Fuck is still a hit 'em home kind of swear, but saying shit, it's just like, that's something that happens when you drop the ice cream off of your cone and you're in front of your kid and you're like, oh shit. And it's the first swear that any kid learns.
Like I said, it doesn't bother me to the point where I'm, I need to, write essays about it or stop watching the show or anything like that. It's just, I noticed that it was very noticeable for me this episode. And I think it's that Picard, when Picard uses that in that sentence, that's what I was going to bring up when you were talking. I'm like, I don't know, man, maybe it's a little much, but I really like the episode as a whole. So, I mean, it doesn't, when they swear, it doesn't take me out of it. It doesn't take me out of the show. It's just, I'm still trying to get used to it being there.
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing that took me out of it was it just seemed awkward and clumsy in terms of a sentence structure.
Yeah, it is.
It's
not. Yeah. That sounded, that to me seems like an ad lib.
And Scotty is definitely an expert in cursing.
Thank you, Jill. Let's see. So and then we do have the we have the goo residue.
The residue.
The residue.
So that I laughed once at that too. I thought it was one time when Seven said it, I thought it was pretty funny. So
I didn't mind residue. I took umbrage. I took umbrage with Clay-Doh.
The Clay-Doh.
You wanted to say Play-Doh, you couldn't. You said Clay-Doh instead. You should have either said clay or dough. You didn't need them both together because you just want today's kids to know what clay is or something.
I thought it was.
I thought it was. They might as well have said Slinky or something.
They could have,
reference to a modern toy. But
they're
we do.
He calls them goo people, right? They're goo people. I think he says goo people. It's funny.
Which makes sense, especially if you're going to it. That's almost like Spoonhead or Cardi.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had that kind of animosity.
And I like the residue. even though it was used probably one or too many times. They went back to it, but it's a fun word, and I thought it worked.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about the scene where Seven and Shaw are talking about how to capture the changeling.
Yes.
And they explain for the audience, who don't know what changelings are, which is fine.
They even show Odo on a pad.
Yeah, which was cool.
Yeah, they show his bucket, and this is where I have a bit of an issue, because what isn't fine about this is that Captain Shaw gives the implication that all changelings use buckets like Odo did, but Odo only used a bucket because that's how Dr. Mora
right.
Yeah.
Would store him. And he got the idea to generate regenerate in there. But after meeting his people in the Great Link, Odo learned how to be more comfortable with himself and let himself just ooze all around his room and do that, using only the bucket for Kira's plant that she brought him a plant. And so the bucket thing is an Odo thing. I don't think it was ever meant to be a whole expansive changeling thing.
But I agree with you in terms of that. But because Odo and Odo's bucket were on the pad, and that would be the most extensive research probably provided by Dr. Mora during the Dominion War.
Yeah.
It's like, this is how they regenerate, or this is one way that they regenerate. And especially when the infiltrator, the saboteur, is trying to be covert, I would assume that you would use a receptacle as opposed to feeling free to be all...
Yeah, you would have to, if you're on a starship, you'd have to use some kind of receptacle, right?
You wouldn't have to if you were a member of the crew, but if you were trying to hide, then you wouldn't be able to just splay all over your quarters in whatever goo form. You're going to be discovered. So they go after, they collect the bucket, and then shoot at random security. He's posing as a random security guy, and then gets away into the machine, into the vents, I guess.
That's another point with the residue.
Oh, yes.
She's looking for Ensign Foster's quarters. She's looking in his quarters, rather, for the bucket, and she finds it in a wall just randomly. And in it, she finds the goo that Foster left behind. But what are the implications exactly if a changeling leaves behind its goo everywhere it goes? Does it regenerate, or will it eventually run out of goo and thus run out of having a body? It's a really strange thing that I don't remember changelings ever just leaving bits of themselves. I know they can detach it consciously from themselves if they want to. But I wonder if slime around and just leave goo like their ectoplasms from Ghostbusters.
I wonder if the idea is that it's microscopic, or I mean, look, we shed our skin all day, every day.
But that was a big chunk. You look at that, that was not microscopic. That was
flakes. No. Yeah, and but that's sort of, I think that was the...
And yes, I did think of that too. The skin thing.
I think that was the intent. I don't think... I don't know. It's weird. They shouldn't be leaving chunks of themselves around.
Right. But they did.
Yeah.
But again, and as you mentioned before, Steve, there's sort of a low bar in terms of what they're going to do. They introduce the changelings, update the changelings for a modern audience, for people who don't know. And until the resurgence of the popularity of Deep Space Nine is a relatively recent, most of the resurgence of things like Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, and Voyager are because if the greatest gift that Secret Hideout and Bad Robot has given us is the fact that all of that old Star Trek that none of us watched before, we're clamoring for it now because the new shit sucks. And so we've gone back to check that out, and that stuff is fresh in our mind. And so this is, and it's part of the problem with when it comes to new Trek, as Edge of Time says, the filth, as Jill says, the filth, is that they're bringing it to a new group of people who don't know what Star Trek is.
Yeah, and I hope that all those people do take the time to go watch all of the previous seasons of Star Trek. There's great stuff there.
Yeah. I just finished over on Pop Culture Curator's channel, finished up watching the animated series for the first time, front to back. And I never would have done that if modern Trek was decent. Because I am
so animation, great stories. Those stories were really cool.
I even think the animation is kind of charming, even though it isn't as dynamic as it could be. But some of the paintings and the background paintings and the imaginative landscapes and spacecraft are pretty good.
I told Scotty a long time ago, we were talking about this specifically, that when we have the ability to do photorealistic AI deepfakes in Unreal Engine, they should redo that series in live action. I think it would be great because the stories are outstanding.
Well, and in the same vein of that, if you could recreate or even just see AI, CGI, deepfake, whatever you want to do, that I would say you have original series dialogue from the two 90s point and click adventure games that was recorded by the original cast that you could absolutely make into short movies. Like those would be better short treks than the short treks that were released. But the big thing and so we do get to we get the changeling gets away, and then we get into what basically is what I think all of the ballyhoo was about in regards to season or episode 4. And I think that Dave Cullen said this. I think Robert Meyer Burnett said this. Those are the two people that I heard this specifically from, is that episode 4 is the one that is, do you want Star Trek and you want new modern Star Trek to feel like old Star Trek? Well, this is the episode for you, is because as we get to the back 9 of this episode, we get the idea of the electromagnetic and the biological pulses being linked to contractions, where the nebula is actually the amniotic. If I'm mispronouncing that, that's it. I knew I was doing it wrong.
Yeah,
I knew I was doing it wrong. Of this womb, and the gravity well is actually the place of birth. They realize that they can harness the powers of the electropulses, that is the release of the biological absorption of the matter of the nebula, to ride the wave out through the technical specifications of a dipshit from Chicago who is an old grease monkey, to ride the wave out of the nebula, or of the birth, the cradle, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
To get the explosion of space sea monkeys.
Yeah.
Space jellyfish. But I think the reason they make Shaw an engineer is because we haven't seen the chief engineer in this whole time. So we don't know who that's supposed to be. So Shaw is filling in for that.
Right. I don't think we've been introduced to any of the engineering team on the Titan, have we?
I think that, and again, she's the only one on the bridge that I don't have a vague idea as to what their name is. I don't know what the gender structure is of her species or their species. On not Tavine, not LaForge, not Morass, but the other one is wearing gold when the lights are up enough to be able to tell the color of the uniform. She is what I would assume to be at the engineering station.
Okay.
And she is the one who is sort of saying, in terms of power, they're the ones who are doing I'm shutting down life support. That's where the focus is during that. I would assume that they are, if not the chief engineer, then one of the engineering team and representative on the bridge.
She's a communications officer.
Is she?
Kova Rin.
Okay. Oh, okay. Then maybe I'm mistaken. It was just a supposition on my part.
But you could be right. I don't know. I'm just guessing because she is wearing gold. Just looked at
I don't know. They certainly haven't made it a point in any of the episodes yet to call that out and lean heavily on that. So, fair enough if it is fair, obviously fair enough, but I just, they haven't made that a piece.
Yeah, and also not having an engineer, that's also why they have to have Beverly counting the entire episode, somehow figuring out that the pattern is some kind of contraction of what we found out was a living being in the last episode, the nebula being living.
Yeah, I think it's been hinted at from pretty early on.
Oh, and Jill?
Yes.
It's pronounced Nebula.
Right. Nebula.
Just so you know, it's Nebula. But also
Spock sabotage the system.
Exactly. If there is a possibility of a Shaw Titan show, don't tip your hand completely if you want to actually cast a chief engineer.
Yeah.
So that could be that. But I think that sort of revelation, that science fiction, even though it has been seen before, they do even say, "Oh, we've seen species like this before who can thrive in deep space," and they say far point, and it's like it's always far point. Whenever you want it to read, it's always far point.
Yeah, but that wasn't the only time you had a species that could survive outside of in deep space. There was also that alien and there was the alien that was sucking the energy from the Enterprise like it was like mother's milk, and they had to
poison
it.
Anyway, but that sort of reassessment upon second viewing was the part where I was like, all right, if that's the resolution of these 4 episodes of what the nebula is, then okay, this is fine. If it's a resolution of villain, spatial anomaly, and character growth that culminates in a parallel of finding your faith in rebirth and life in the galaxy, while dealing with the loss of your child and the emergence of discovering a new one. It all sort of tied together while still leaving threads for us to follow the further adventures.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I also think it's kind of funny in that scene that they also show that whenever the energy wave hits the ship, it actually turns the lights on. You can see everything, and they it seems like they're kind of making fun of themselves there, self-referential humor that, hey, we could actually use this energy to turn the lights on. Terry's like, I could do that if you wanted, but I don't want you. I don't want you to turn the lights on.
And and that is actually, it's very disappointing that I can't get the slides up, because I did actually capture the one shot where they finally turned off all the lights, and we were joking, Jill and I, when we were watching it, and I was like, I don't think they can get this show any darker. They can't. It's too dark.
Yes.
Do I have? Are there some? Are they somewhere where I can grab them?
No, they're on my desktop. Okay. I didn't up. Yeah, I was just going to share a screen, but my computer is being ornery. But yeah, it's it is almost laughable. If I were to go on a ship, I would expect a brighter working environment.
Yes.
And I understand, and I watched a couple episodes of Voyager last week, and I was like, wait a second, they do this on Voyager when they go to red alert. It's not constantly nightclub lighting. Right. And that was kind of funny, going from the Titan into the set for 10 forward, and it's like it's bar lighting. Everywhere has bar lighting. So I'm looking forward to the next episodes, just to see if we can get outside in the daylight or see something that is a little bit more well lit.
Yeah. I agree.
But overall, like, I did post in the chat, which I swear to God, guys, we're gonna get to. I just got kerfuffled in terms of
we should pop over there now, dude. And,
we should absolutely.
Actually, okay, well.
Oh, what's up, Jill?
Unless you have something, Jill.
I do. Well, I have a lot, actually.
Okay, please.
I didn't really. I was away for most of a lot of what you guys were talking about, so I missed a lot of things.
Well,
and this particular scene, it's something that this show does a lot. they say something and then they say it again. They repeat it 2 or 3 times as if I didn't hear it the first time. And that is a great way to pad your season out to 10 episodes. but anyway, they do come up with the technobabble answer to find out what's going on, and that's fine. But they have Riker be very pessimistic about it, and I know he turns around at the end of the episode, but it's just kind of weird. He has to invoke Beverly has to invoke Deanna to get him to go along with the teamwork theme of the episode of everybody working together. But I don't know, the dialogue's a little I'm not excited.
Yeah. Oh, what it remind you're absolutely right. And there are a couple of times that they reiterate, and when they have Crusher at the end say to seek out new life, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then when Beverly says,
hammy.
If Deanna were here, she would say it's about trust. And it's like,
dude, at the end, I thought somebody was gonna continue on with the phrase after Beverly. I'm glad they didn't. I think it's like, let's get the hell out of here or something. It was a good way to get out of that, because I'm like, it was a little, that's a little heavy-handed, a little ham-fisted there, but it is what it is.
Well, and just in reference to what you're talking about, Jill, because I know when we were watching it, the fake. So anyway, the changeling turns into fake Ensign LaForge and comes in and basically is about to kill Shaw, and then Seven shows up and pulls one of those new funky disruptor phasers that I'm not a big fan of, because they're just very aggressive looking and they don't fit with the Starfleet aesthetic, in my opinion.
They don't.
But and then it's like, Commander, it's me, it's LaForge. And it's like, Commander what? Commander Hansen. Pew, pew, pew.
Bing.
And then Shaw says, how did you know? And it's like, because LaForge calls me Commander 7 out of respect. And at the time when we watched it, I was like, you don't have to explain that to me. But then I watched it the second time and I was like, you have to explain it to him. To Shaw. Yeah.
Right.
She had to explain it to him. Yeah.
She's trying to shame him into calling her by her name.
Yeah, she wasn't talking to the audience. She was talking directly to him.
And it's an interesting choice of words, Jill. Shame him into saying her name, or is it just finally getting through to him as to why it's important to her? Like, if it is something, it's like, I know it's not. I think it's the latter.
I took it as the latter.
I
didn't take it as a shaming. I mean, I could be wrong, obviously, but I didn't take it that way.
These two characters don't like each other, I think, is established.
Yeah.
And if there is an interpretation of it being a shaming, then I think that is something within their characters, and that's just Seven being a bitch. But it's her being a bitch because nothing else is going to get through to this asshole. And he himself says somewhere along the line, asshole replaced charming.
Yeah.
So I can accept it, but I do think that there were times when it's like, oh yeah, it's the such and such, and it's like, oh, you mean the such and such, and it's like, no, you got it, it's cool, you can move. But yeah.
And did you mention the asteroid that got thrown at the Shrike just to make Shrike kind of not mean much in this episode? Like, she's hardly anything at all as a result. Except to see the changeling master.
I don't think. I thought it was a nice reversal, because in the second episode, she threw a ship, and everyone was like, they just threw a ship at us. And in this one, it's like, Will, did you just throw an asteroid?
Yeah,
you're goddamn right, I did.
Yeah, and that's how it landed for me. I'm like, see, we're learning from our mistakes, right? We're learning from experience, right? So she threw a ship at us, and I'll throw an asteroid at her. I thought it worked. I thought it worked perfectly.
I was okay with it.
And it wasn't like So in the scene, the Shrike's not chasing them around or anything. They're riding this wave trying to get the hell out of there, and the Shrike just kind of intercepts them, and then and while they're on their way to their rendezvous point, I guess they're grabs the asteroid with a tractor beam and slingshots it into the Shrike. I thought it was a good move, smart move, and it made sense to the learning on the go as we're out there, trying to figure it out.
Well, and it was a nice parallel or bookend to this plot line,
right?
These 4 episodes.
Act.
Yeah, and
better term.
Yeah, and I thought it worked. The nebulous state of the nebula, I think, is interesting as the act goes on, because they don't want to go into the nebula because of the payload, or they don't want to go too close to the gravity well because of the payload. But the Shrike doesn't really do anything until the end when it has to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly how I see it. But by the end of the episode, seeing the jellyfish aliens is what reminds Riker that he isn't supposed to be pessimistic, and it just magically almost cures him into remembering about marveling at the wonders of the universe. And it's just a little.
I don't think you think that was contrived? I don't think. Yes. I thought that was very well executed. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean that would, though. I mean, just based on what we know from the original series. I'm sorry, from TNG, is that part of their wonderment was being out there and meeting.
Yeah, and so why would he forget all of that? Oh, I suddenly forgot 7 years.
I didn't take that. I didn't take it that he forgot. He's just in a different state. I think the death of his son not only put him into a funk and into a dark place, but obviously his relationship with Deanna Troi is also, trying to weather the outcome of what happened with his son, or with their son. So I don't think it's he forgotten and magically remembered. I didn't take it like that at all. I think it's these people, and rightly so, you go through different periods in your life, and not everything is sunshine and rainbows all the time, and I think this is just one of those dark times for Riker. And I think they set that up, pretty early on in the first episode, that he's having not only is it the bringing up issues of him and his son, but also that there's tension in marriage.
That's another issue here, where he's trying to. I obviously can't fault a dad from feeling nothing about everything when his whole world, his son, was lost. But if he's suffering from this kind of deep state of depression where he thinks there is nothing in anything, then I don't really know that he should be serving right now in Starfleet as a way to cure his mental state.
Well, well, serving, yes, but I as far as I know, as far as we've been told, he's riding a desk somewhere. So maybe that's why, right?
That would make sense.
Because he's in this dark place, he's not commanding a starship.
Well, and I in terms of where Riker has been, other than Picard, he's been shown on lower decks on the Titan, but I think that's pre-Thaddeus and pre-Kestra. So I don't think that he was necessarily in his jazz funk. Thank you, Finity. About this until he was sort of a captain at large, a captain without a chair, as Shaw put it in the first episode. But I do like in terms of the familial issues that are going on as a husband married to an empath who doesn't feel anything. I like that was set up in the first episode, and in the fourth episode, it was somewhat resolved, at least to Deanna's satisfaction.
Right.
So, Jill, before we delve into about an hour and a half's worth of chat, is there anything that you would like to add, or and not that we're done talking, because I'm sure the fine people here watching are going to bring up a lot of things that we're going to be discussing. But are there anything that you wanted to say before we get into the chat? We'll take that as a no for now. But I'm sure that she will.
I was talking. Sorry about that.
You were muted. No, you were muted.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I was looking through my notes to see if there was anything left, and sorry to throw off the.
That's okay. You're fine.
I've already screwed it all up. Don't worry.
Okay, so. I completely missed your discussion of the holodeck. So, so even so they have the power. What did you say about the power separating from the power of the holodeck being separated from the rest of the ship?
I just said that it was Steve, you said that it was good that they addressed it.
Yeah, well, yeah, they tried.
And I said that I didn't like the fact that they said it was because it was going to be a sanctuary. I said that it should have been a power cell to enable the holodeck to become an emergency science lab.
Yeah, either that or, use it as a backup generator for the life support that they're losing power to, that they're trying to redirect power for the entire episode. But also in other Star Trek and TNG and Voyager, they use the mess hall or the real 10 Ford in order to pull their human resources and also make triage easier for the chief medical officer, who also, I did want to mention, doesn't show up in this episode when she's there.
Anyway, I don't think she has a speaking role in the episode, but she's there.
Well, she doesn't work with in an episode that means to have a theme of teamwork. She doesn't really. She's not being part of the team here.
Well, and in terms of, this is something that I sort of grappled with as well, and we discussed it, and it was, I think that Tavine should have been on, I think there should have been communication with the bridge in terms of the theory that Beverly was developing throughout the episode. There was no focus on any of the Titan crew coming to any of these conclusions or even inclinations.
Right.
Okay.
And I would have liked that.
Me too.
But I also, that is something that keeps popping up in my head when it's like, I wonder if they will do a Shaw show redemption. No.
Shaw show redemption.
And sorry. And that was too easy. And but I think that we're there to see the reunion of Picard, Riker, Crusher, and them being the focus of the show with the introduction of Jack. And that's who we're paying attention to, with Shaw being the liaison to the Titan and Seven as well. But the rest of the crew all just sort of become, they don't fade into the background as badly. And the rest of, in Discovery specifically, I don't know what goes on in Strange New Worlds, but it seems like it was more to be able to highlight the people that we paid to see, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it seems like, again, we seem to be, arguing what we want to happen instead of what did happen. And
absolutely, I am.
Yeah, I just don't.
I know what I want.
Yeah, just doesn't.
But we do have lots of chat. I'm happy. I'm happy to read the chat.
You're happy with it? Well, no. I don't think.
I'm happy to read the chat.
Oh, absolutely. So am I. But I don't think, again, I'm a big fan of review review the show that was presented, not the one you want. I understand, and
I did, but part of Star Trek is the teamwork.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
in a show that says we're all about teamwork, let's fucking ignore all of the people on the Titan.
Right. And I think that they were sort of secondary.
Yes.
And whether or not they're going to be highlighted in the future, I don't know. I do agree with your observation. It's not even an argument. It's an observation, and it's an accurate one. It is something just for the nature of the story. I think that they're highlighting, Picard's name is in the title, and that's why we're focusing on his besties instead of the crew of a ship that we've never really seen before and has only been name dropped once in terms of the 735. And that's in Nemesis, so I don't even know if it counts.
What, Titan?
They could, well, because after the wedding, that's where.
But it was mentioned in All Good Things. I'm sorry, not All Good Things, in Parallels.
The Titan?
Yeah.
When I don't recall them
in the episode Parallels, and Riker is the captain of the Titan, I believe. I think it's Parallels. I'll get back to you on that. Okay. Make sure I'm thinking of the right episode.
And if it was a name drop in that episode, then I just don't recall it. All right, then. Thank you, you patient people. And when I say that we have an hour and a half of chat to catch up on, I do not mean to imply that you guys are, by any stretch of the imagination, a chore. It's just that usually the last 3 episodes have gone so smoothly, and we've known where to make our chat breaks. And now I got confused as to how long this was going to go based on my technical difficulties. So if you're going to blame anyone, I am the object of your ire. Daniel's Hot Topics is here and says this episode was the best so far.
I agree.
Jill?
Okay.
Oh, you know what? It avoids the topic of the dystopia of Starfleet. So yeah, sure.
Well, and don't forget, speaking of and we'll get, I still want to have a conversation with you about the nature of Starfleet before we start talking about the nature of Starfleet, because that could be a whole show on its own. As you've mentioned, it's something that we may talk about on your channel. So, Edge of Time is here. Hello, Edge of Time. Jill, would you like to read?
Yes. He spells out FILTH, which of course is the filth, which is anything with the Star Trek label made after 2005.
After 2005, yes. Which I will accept after 2017, with the obvious. Into Darkness doesn't count. We don't talk about Into Darkness.
You just skip that one.
So, well,
you're okay with the JJ filth, but not the Kurtzman filth in general.
Right. I'm okay with the 237. Scogly's here. Hey, Scogly. When he worked
377 is for you.
37. Isn't it 37? 735.
It's 365. So 367.
I thought it was 735 was the group.
735. Oops, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I got my numbers mixed up in my brain. I'm sorry about that. 735 iterations of Star Trek, 725 episodes, and 10 movies.
Yes, and so I add 2009 and beyond onto that. I don't talk about Into Darkness as being anything. And the only reason that I feel justified in doing that is because if you're going to include Nemesis, then I'm going to include those two. So there we are. That's my negotiation. Scogly says, when he worked on the show in Enterprise, I think they had named the planet Metalis 4 or Metalis Prime, and he took note of it and just brought it back. He didn't come up with that. That is true. He did say they established Metalis Prime, but they didn't say Metalis 4. But both Steve and Jill corrected me today in saying, well, if there's a Metalis Prime, then there should be a Metalis 4, and I'll take it.
Several Metalises.
There are Metali. Lemon says Planet Scotty would have been better. Named after Montgomery.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was just acknowledging the nature of solar systems.
Yeah.
They exist.
True. Scogli says, and then her response to the "How did you know?" I couldn't have rolled my eyes harder. First time I watched it, I agree, Scogli. I was like, you didn't have to say that. I get it. And then I sort of realized, talking to Shaw.
Mhm.
Scogli goes on to say, all in all, I was very satisfied with this episode.
Cool.
And don't worry, Scogli, I warmed up. Hakeem is here. Hey, Hakeem. Scogli says, very character driven.
Mhm.
And I would assume that there was a power issue in medical. They were drawing it from literally everywhere. Yes. Yeah. Well, if you're referring to the darkness, I think that was just the way it was. Dalek451. Hey, Dalek. Good to see you.
Hi, Dalek.
And Dalek says, I was over at Cardinal Sin's channel and I had to leave. The conversation was so dour and depressing. Well, hopefully you found some happiness here. But speaking of Cardinal Sin's channel, he is apparently doing a midnight to midnight this Saturday. And that's going to be midnight central. And he has invited myself, and I may be doing that on Saturday night. And so if you want to check it out, I think today is his birthday.
Midnight to midnight, huh?
It doesn't go that long. It's just a late night stream. That's what I was told.
Yeah, it's not exactly a 24. It's based on some kind of band or something. It's just named
It's
after
been a while
something.
since I've been on Cardinal Sin's show, so and I'm not a regular viewer.
Daniel's Hot Topic says, so I was shocked to find out that Vatic is a changeling. When she put the blade to her arm, I was like, what the fuck? She's a changeling.
Yeah, and so I think Jill and Scotty got it right, and I think I was, because I only watched it like I said, I only watched it once, and I felt the same way. I thought I'm like, she's a changeling, but it doesn't make sense. She cut her arm, her hand off or whatever. So yeah, if a changeling wouldn't need to do that, Scotty was 100% right. So I think
it would just be like
I think Jill's prosthetic is the best answer that we have right now. That's and it's weird, but okay.
It is weird. It reminds me of Voldemort in Harry Potter when he gives Wormtail arm, metal arm. So it's just like this villain is giving her an arm, so she's got to do whatever he says.
I'm fascinated to see the explanation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but I was under the same impression, and I didn't get it, and then I don't. Yeah. But also something that I just wanted to give a shout out to our very own Terrier Tiberius Mork. He was talking to us and said, wasn't it cool to see the Riemann blade?
The Riemann blade, yeah.
And it's the same blade that Tom Hardy, what's his name in Nemesis?
Tom Hardy.
No, I know the character's name. Shinzon. Shinzon's blade from the poster, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And a good catch. I didn't see that. Scogli says, I enjoyed the scene too. The demon she summons or whatever was cool. Little Star Wars for my liking, but we'll see how this goes. I'm fine with the changelings being there and the splinter changelings. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you had to do some kind of communication device, I suppose. That's a way to do it. It was a little off-putting. It was, what the hell's going on here? It was weird, but okay.
Yeah, it was definitely weird. What about who Vatic was talking to? It looks creepy. Captain Foley said it would be the changelings are working with the Pa Wraiths.
Pa Wraiths?
Well,
I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't think the changelings have the reverence for the wormhole aliens or the prophets or the Pa Wraiths as the Bajorans did.
Yeah, the Pa Wraiths were shut away. That's what Cisco's sacrifice is all about. So I don't think it's the Pa Wraiths.
Yeah,
in the fire.
Yep.
The fire caves.
Yep.
There were theories that a wormhole in that nebula and that wormhole could lead to Deep Space Nine or the Pa Wraiths. I don't.
Yeah, but I think that was that didn't happen. So it was just space babies.
Yes, we had the sea monkeys or space. What did you call them? Space jellyfish.
Yep.
Kyle Armstrong. Hey, Kyle. The drama of the story. Is there a story without drama, Jill?
Well, I just mean marrying the drama to the science fiction is a very complicated art that lots of science fiction stories are not capable of achieving, and here we're not quite there yet.
Hey,
yeah, I think we're there, but
fine. And again, as we've mentioned, in terms of the low bar that it takes,
right?
This is sort of the closest to an amalgamation of classic Star Trek and like 735 Star Trek being brought into this that we have in a long time. Captain Finity is here, and he says
skin job.
A toaster. Yeah, and yes. That's something that I'm aware of it, and if I were to judge this season based on the first 2 seasons of Picard, I would be able to rant and rave and say how nothing fits, the characterization doesn't work, we've dumped half the cast. This is just something that if you accept it, it is there, and every time they remind you, it's like, oh, right, it's not really Picard, and then you get into a metaphysical debate as to whether or not
it is or not
actually
right.
Yeah, you do have to accept that none of the characters are going to act like they did before. The characterization is all completely different.
Right. Kyle says, I think everyone is forgetting that 5 years ago, Flashback Jack would have been 15. So you go to track down your dad, ask him about how he feels about family, and says he never needed it. No, and I agree.
Yeah, it'd screw you up, right? So it's no wonder.
Well, and also it was funny when they're in the holodeck and Jack says, when did your hair start to go? And he's like, how old are you? 23, 24? And I think the actor's actually 34?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is a good point, Kyle, because it's hard to believe he's 15 when he's in his 30s. So that is something to remember. But Picard says that Starfleet is his family. Beverly is Starfleet. Ergo, there's nothing to say that he doesn't care about his mom. So
yeah, but that's not. I mean, in the context of that that's not where that would go. It's played out exactly how it would go, right? Because in that context, you wouldn't say. You would absolutely feel like he was more married to Starfleet than your
committed
family.
To. Yeah. And Scogli says, I feel you, Kyle. That would hit hard for a kid. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
And again, thanks, Kyle. I appreciate your perspective on this, because it's something that for this season, for me to even enjoy it, I have to sort of side with you. Captain Finity, I've moved past it. It was really stupid idea, and we have to live with the decision they made.
Unfortunately. Yeah, but you just gotta kind of put that out of your. It sucks.
Well, Infinity says, and again, this is the other side of the coin. No, we don't. 40 years in the Blade Runner Deckard debate is still going. And yeah, I agree. And Kyle, if you're a fan of the Blade Runner debate when it comes to the nature of Rick Deckard, then I would say head over to Finity's channel. He has volumes on the subject. Hey, Matt G is here. Hey, Matt G.
Matt G says, Jill.
Scogli says the goo that her hand transformed into looked exactly the same as the goo that the changeling on the ship turned into when Seven shot it. Oh yeah,
I absolutely think that's changeling goo that became that skull or wherever that was in the communication device. So that yes, they are. It is the changeling goo. I just don't know that. I now realize that she's not a complete changeling. It's probably a prosthetic, which is weird. But it might be a way for the changelings to, to have some kind of keep her in line, have a presence to make sure that things go the way they. I don't know. It's a very weird concept that I'm fascinated by now, and hopefully we get a good resolution to that, because I think I said earlier that's going to be a huge red flag for me. I'm like, dude, you can't drop something like that and never, bring it back up again and make a resolution on that, because that's weird.
You basically have a hand puppet.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, well, if that's there, if it's not just a communication device and it is actually part changeling that is supervising from the end of the arm, then why isn't it just a changeling in charge of the ship?
Yeah, right. I don't. They're gonna have to figure that out. I'm fascinated by how they're gonna.
Dan says, I love that guy who formed for Vadic's hand, and it was like the Emperor from Star Wars or Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, like future guy from Enterprise. We need more big bad guys like this in Star Trek. And as long as it's resolved, or at least acknowledged, they explain what they got to explain Vadic anyway.
So they have to explain both, right? They have to explain Vadic and why she's doing this, right? And her motivations, and then they got to explain the whole hand communication thing, because that's strange. It's new. It's just kind of new for Star Trek, in my opinion. I don't think I've seen anything.
Yes, you're right. They absolutely did not spend a second trying to explain what's going on.
And maybe they're not supposed to yet, and maybe we're not. Maybe that gets explained. It absolutely has to get explained, or else this season will be, like the other two.
Well, and
lost.
And that's the main thing in terms of the conversation being had about this season right now for people who haven't seen it. And as you said, Steve, maybe it would be more satisfying to watching it all in one binge. But as we are still on episode 4 of 10 episodes, it's the curse of reading a book. Once you're done chapter 4 and say, I don't think this is going to pay off, there's still, if it's a 10 chapter book, you still got to read the next 6 chapters to find out if everything's going to be paid off in a satisfying way. Kyle, I hope this is why you're asking me this, but it's like the episode Code of Honor. Have you seen Code of Honor? No, Lieutenant Yaw. No vaccine. I just love that voice. I don't even know if I'm being racist. I just love. No, they're aliens. They're not even people. They're people, but they're aliens.
They're aliens.
Anyway, yeah. So I am a big fan of that.
They were supposed to be lizards.
Were they?
Yeah.
In the original, they were supposed to be lizard people? They eventually...
They were supposed to be, yeah. They were supposed to be lizards. Not necessarily Gorn, but a type of reptile.
That would have been cool. And yes, at Captain Infinity, I apologize. Great chat game here on the Fanta. We are an inconvenience to them. No, my game got totally thrown, dude. It was my fault. I apologize. So, but I'm glad you guys are holding up the end. End.
You're not our real mom. Thank you.
But we're happy to have you, and it is my mistake. Let me see. Kyle says in 2371, the crew of the USS Voyager tried hooking up the holodeck reactors to the ship's system as an alternative energy source. However, the holodeck reactors being hooked up to the power grid ended up blowing half the relays of the ship. Ensign Harry Kim found that the holodeck's energy matrix was not compatible with Voyager's other power systems from the episode Parallax.
I remember that.
Yo, look at you. Thank you, Kyle. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, and now that I've gone to gone through TAS, the next stop on my list is I gotta catch up on my Voyager. And so Scoglie says Riker stands up for Picard is being the same man when his son Jack scoffs at him as being positronic. Yeah, that is a thing. And also it's very strange after these 4 episodes because it feels like a resolution that is going to move forward, but we still have to see Moriarty and we still have to see Lore. Maybe Lore will make beef about the positronic nature.
Maybe. I mean, definitely, right?
Well, yes. I would hope. Also,
staying true to character.
And something else that we didn't really mention and I wanted to bring up is this is the first time in any of the episodes of Picard, to my recollection, that we actually get a log. We get a log,
Right.
Admiral's log,
Yeah.
stardate. I don't even know if they give a stardate, but
They did.
like
He did. Yeah.
and that's, it's about time. And I think that's one of the things that Patrick Stewart going into it was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to wear the spacesuit and I don't want to do captain's logs. And I'm glad they finally got him to do a log entry.
Yeah.
Petey York is here. Hey, Petey. Thank you so much for being here, man. I felt the F-bomb in this scene was as tasteful as an F-bomb could be in Star Trek. Yes.
I didn't find it distasteful. I thought the cussing was excessive. I don't think they like the sentence structure, like Scotty pointed out. I think I had more of an issue with in that particular scene than the word itself.
Yeah. And PD says, how many intoxicated folks have sentence coherency, though? Yeah. Hey, after a couple glasses of Jameson's.
You're right. I mean, look. Okay.
Yeah. And Matt G, you're right. They cursed in Generations. Data did. They cursed in Star Trek 4. They cursed in 09. They do. They curse. Or they have.
In the movies.
Yeah, no F-bombs. Mostly
I
just
don't think
shit,
so.
ass,
yeah,
things like that. But yeah, it is getting a little bit more free, but I think that's also dialogue catered to, I hate continuing to say modern audience, but that's the way.
And to be perfectly honest, I've watched the episodes of TV way more than I do the movies.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah. I think I'm there too now. Like, I think I used to watch the movies more. But then with like streaming, like with Netflix in Canada,
I constantly watch, I mean, rainy day, sick, I'm, hungover, whatever. That's my go-to. So
cleaning,
anything.
Yeah. Sometimes I just time how long I'm out of the house. I'll turn on the motion picture, leave, come back, and maybe we're at V'ger. Who knows?
Right.
Matt G says Shatner said bastard in Search for Spock, so some kind of swearing existed, and that's pre-Voyage Home as well. So
I was specifically talking about the television shows. I totally agree and acknowledge that there was swearing in the movies.
Yeah. Kyle says, I think when Picard calls Shaw a dipshit from Chicago, it works because Picard is trying to relate to Shaw, but Picard's fuck doesn't. Yeah. And I'm okay with they were, I don't think they were half in the bag because there's still a lot of stuff that goes on after they leave the holodeck. But I think that was just an improvisation that they let go.
But the dipshit from Chicago line delivered and executed beautifully. I thought it was great.
Yeah. And Captain Finity, a frackin' toaster. Nice Battlestar Galactica in there. We had Star Wars. Let's do some Galactica. Frackin' toaster strolling around like it's his damn ship. Yeah. Oh, right. And no Raffi. PD York says the first 4 episodes, minus Raffi, are its own mini-series. Yeah. I like that this felt like the ending of an arc with more arcs to follow. Me too.
Yeah, definitely the end of Act 1, right?
Yes. Canadian Spider-Man from warmer climates. Good to see you, sir. At the Phantasmagorium show, hail to you, eh? Hail to you and Jill and Steve Foley. Whoop, whoop. Cheers. And then PD York says, okay, but where is an undercover changeling going to hide? Agreed. Yeah. In terms of not being able to sort of kick back and put up his feet.
I was fine with it. Look, are the receptacles all going to look alike? I don't think so. So making it look, almost similar to Odo's, I think was maybe a misstep, but I mean, it's just nitpicky stuff. I don't think it matters.
At that point, like I was aware of the fact that Odo just sort of draped himself wherever he wanted to when he was regenerating, and he had discarded the bucket. And Jill's absolutely correct that it was Dr. Mora's suggestion that he be in the bucket.
Yeah.
But
isn't in the very last episode, doesn't he give the bucket to Kira?
He does give the bucket to Kira. I don't think in
Yeah.
the last episode. I think that's part of the montage from previously in the series.
Okay.
But it could be, it was part of a montage, and it could have been for the last. But yes, he does give it to Kira.
Yeah.
PD York says, and if the changeling linked to Odo's thoughts, it would probably see the bucket memories and go, yeah, that's a good disguise.
Right. Yeah. Or a good place to regenerate when you're on a starship. Some kind of receptacle, right? I mean, I guess you could go into the sink, stop up the sink, and hang out in the sink.
But you're still in plain view as well.
You're still in plain view, right?
Yes. And Captain Finity, yes, there is no, from a certain point of view, I hate to Obi-Wan Kenobi, but yes, from a certain point of view, there's no Picard in Picard. Canadian Spider-Man says, yes. See, Jill's not away. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Canadian Spider-Man says, is Antiderivative Jill changing her mind on the filth because Scotty R37 is so damn convincing?
I don't think so, but
not at all.
Here's for hoping.
Much to Steve's chagrin, I have not changed my mind. I answer such in the chat. I have a chat that answers.
Is it after this question?
Yes.
Okay, good. But this is just a tale of three people who love Star Trek. One is Steve. I would say that you're on board and you're moving forward with the utmost of anticipation and optimism as to what's going to come after this episode, right?
Correct.
Jill?
Yeah, and so basically, even what I told Canadian Spider-Man is that even though I don't accept it as Star Trek, that doesn't mean I'm not willing to talk about it with friends.
Exactly. And I am looking at this based on Jill has convinced me of the 735 Club, coined by R.M. Briggs from the Clobberin Times channel for their Saturday Night Star Trek. I subscribe to that philosophy and theory of that there are 735. I expanded it because I can't do everything by the rules completely. And also the 735 includes Nemesis, as I said before, which is a piece of shit. But we're having the conversation, communicating and cooperating to come to some sort of understanding as to what exactly is this season.
Well, right, because canon isn't merit-based. I still include Code of Honor, even though I hate that episode. You never want to see it again.
But canon is merit-based by your estimation.
Well, in some certain sense. I mean, which universe are you in? After 2005, you're no longer in the Star Trek universe.
I mean, Code of Honor is one thing, but it's certainly no Barge of the Damned.
Oh,
what is that?
That's a Voyager episode.
Is that the one with B'Elanna? What is that?
The one where the Barge of the Damned, where she supposedly dies and sees.
Oh, and she goes to Stovacor.
B'Elanna, yeah. Well, on the
hey,
like in the in between on the way to Stovacor.
Oh my God! Someone should have told Riker about that. Maybe he wouldn't think there's no afterlife then. If you knew about that episode.
But yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So I'm not even trying to convince Jill. But no. I'm just trying to come to a consensus or some sort of coming together to say, yeah, this aspect of Star Trek is shit when it comes to the filth. But that doesn't mean that it's not Star Trek. And if there are people who are fans of it in any from 2009 to episode 4 of season 3, if there is anybody who likes any of that, and they say, you know what, I just got into this new Star Trek stuff, then I'll be like, you saw new Star Trek. Let me try and push you, nudge you, ease you into the 735 because there's better stuff there, I promise. That's what I want. I want there to be a gateway for people who like the new stuff to appreciate the old stuff.
Yeah, I think that's great. Because
it may not work.
Like we said, it may not, because they are of their time. Scotty and I were having a small conversation before the show about that. It's and it just may not appeal to newer modern audiences, but I'm hoping that everybody gives it a shot because there's some really good stuff there.
Like I absolutely, if people like the first 2 seasons of Star Trek Picard, the first episode I'm going to show them is Code of Honor, and I'm going to ask them which is better, and they're going to say no Natasha Yar, no vaccine. PD says maybe some changelings shed goo. Possibly. Possibly.
I mean, I would say on the microscopic level, yes, but not in. I mean, they can't just leave chunks every time they, there's no. It has to be microscopic. So they should have. They should explain that a little better. They should have done that better.
It looked like the little bit of backwash at the bottom of a pint glass when you're done a beer, and I was just like, no. Anyway.
Maybe he's going to go back to it. So
I did my best not to mention realizing that the changelings now look like vomit because the changelings.
Yeah, you didn't like you prefer the 90s CGI.
Yes, the silver metallic. That's fun.
The goldy silvery. Yeah,
they kind of look like the Blob from the Blob.
Yeah, a little bit. It was a little fleshy, but I don't know. Maybe it'll grow on me. I didn't care for it much either. I was hoping it'd be more like Deep Space Nine goo.
Well, and we were talking about it earlier, and I was like, you wanted the bad. Like, if you go back and you look at, and I know Jill has been going back and looking at Deep Space Nine, but I just find the CGI for the changelings to be a little bit jarring in a way. But I accept it because it's fine and of its time. But whenever he does his changeling thing, I'm just like, hey, look, it's the 90s. So
yeah, right. It's not good. It's not great.
So I'm okay with this sort of updating of that effect. Kyle says apparently Shaw was named in honor of Robert Shaw for his Quint speech in this episode. If true, dude, earned.
Right.
I am on Team Shaw.
Yeah, me too.
And Captain Infinity says, I thought Scotty could convince me of anything or literally anything. Yeah, well, I'm not always all that convincing.
No, and to tell you the truth, it's not the job. It's not your job to convince somebody to like something or hate something. You present your argument, and hopefully what it does is it sharpens, by giving your opinion, it sharpens other people's opinions, right? Or why they think what they think and how they think it. But it's definitely not anybody's job to convince you one way or the other.
And to labor the metaphor is like, I'm not trying to. I feel like either I'm on the jury or I am on trial for even being open to the idea of this season, because there is a very polarizing group from the people who are doing flips over this as being the best Star Trek that we've seen in ages and ages. And there are people who are saying, nope, burn it down, don't support it. And I'm just sitting here watching this and I'm going, I haven't seen, I'm still curious to see how it plays out. I don't think it's the best thing ever. I don't think it's the worst thing ever. I'm just watching it and hoping that it turns out.
I don't like tribalism in politics. I don't like it in fandom. And it's unfortunately, it's just everywhere right now. It just sucks.
You can hear all about it on our new podcast. Scott doesn't give a shit about Lord of the Rings. It's coming out.
Right.
We're still doing that. P.D. York says, unless they genetically modified themselves, this is a separate link. True.
It is a separate link.
And here we are. Jill, would you like to read your response to Canadian Spider-Man?
Yes. I don't understand why you think I'm changing my mind about anything. Just because I know it's not Star Trek doesn't mean I'm not willing to discuss it. And I also do agree that it would be best for Star Trek if Secret Hideout were fired from their production company and they got a new production company.
Now, I don't know
who, to get people who actually care about the franchise, because Kurtzman obviously doesn't. And he owns Secret Hideout. So
yeah, and I don't think I don't know. Well, I won't say any, but I don't think there's a majority of people out there that would disagree. I don't think that there's a majority of people that are like, yes, more secret hideout. I think the majority of people on either side of the Picard season 3 debate still would rather have a different company.
You're right, and I have seen some agreement there on both sides.
But I mean, just realistically, that's just, I don't see that happening anytime in the future, which sucks.
You don't want more Star Trek from the writer of Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, or the director of the Tom Cruise Mummy,
or the creator of Clarice, which had no Hannibal Lecter in it.
Right, right. Wow.
You know what? That's the worst thing to happen in modern history, is that I wish that Clarice had been successful, because then maybe Kurtzman wouldn't have been involved in the new Star Trek.
Yeah.
PD York says, yes, the filth will always be a shining turd of an example of what never to do again. And the reason, not only because you said it so eloquently, PD, the reason I agree with you wholeheartedly is never to do again. My hope is always that in the future, there will be new good Star Trek, and I will not burn the whole barn down just to
and if this
fight Kurtz.
Right. If this season continues to be what we've gotten so far, and it's a satisfying ending, I'm hoping it shows. First of all, let's not kowtow to the actors' whims and what they want the shows to be. That it actually needs to come from writers that understand the franchise, the IP, and write to it, instead of, what Patrick Stewart, what stories he wants to tell, because that's exactly what we got these first 2 episodes. The only reason he came back, I get that, but they should have never done that. I would rather have no Picard than what we got in the first 2 seasons. So I'm hoping that shines a light on that particular thing. They don't do that again. But I don't know if it's gonna magically change anybody's mind there, and that, okay, now we have to do, we got to change our ways. I just don't think anything's gonna change the way they're doing things. I think this was an anomaly where Terry Matalas was in a position where he kind of got left alone and he did his own thing, and I think this is kind of a one-off.
Allegedly.
But so far, and as we said before, it's the valedictorian of the filth so far.
Yeah.
PD York says, I'm in the middle of a DS9 rewatch on my channel with my younger brother. Would not have happened without Strange New Worlds. And precisely.
It's awesome.
And Canadian Spider-Man says, if it walks like a beaver, talks like a beaver, and tastes like a beaver, then it's a freaking beaver. It's a toast.
I like beaver.
I'm a Canadian, so they're on my nickels.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a Canadian axiom.
It does. PD York says, it feels like a proper TNG reunion. More TNG reunions to come. I don't want to be hurt again, but I love it. Yeah, my guard is I am still shields up. I'm at yellow alert on this. So, yes. Oh, and nice one, PD. The chief engineer was supposed to arrive on Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah. True. And Kyle giving big ups for that one. It's always Tuesday. And yeah, Kyle, in terms of the space, Tin Man, the not the Offspring. The Offspring is with Lol. I forget. Oh, the Child. The Child is the name of the one that Geordie Max on Leah Brahms with.
Yeah.
And
fake... Galaxy's Child. Yeah.
Galaxy's Child.
Yeah.
Galaxy. Not the Child. The Child is the one where Troy gets pregnant.
That's right.
And that's and going back to the episodic nature, I like how I can talk about Star Trek episodes and say, remember the one when, remember the one with, and when you're talking about this season so far, it's remember the beginning of the nebula, then the second part with the nebula, then the third part with the nebula, and when they get out of the nebula, it's
Yeah.
So just that entire arc. Okay.
But yeah, kind of why RLM is reviewing them in chunks.
And yeah. Well, yes. I'm looking, and I actually, what was it? Mike and Rich, they just released their review for episodes 2, 3, and 4, which I abstained from watching because I
Yeah, I
didn't want to
haven't
be
seen it yet
swayed.
either. I just heard that they were positive.
Yes, and not that they know of us at all, not
No, of
that they
course
would
not.
talk to us at all,
Of course not.
but my
Never.
personal thought is that until Mike and Rich give their opinions of Star Trek on the internet, there are no official opinions of Star Trek on the internet. So I know it's ridiculous, but it's called
You're
hero
funny.
worship. Mike and Rich have the final say in my mind.
Okay.
So that's my view. Skogley says, unfortunately, the budget doesn't allow for proper rendering of lit sets. They gotta pay. They gotta pay for the lights.
Yeah, they
Kyle
gotta
Arms,
pay for their vomit changelings.
they're vomit changelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't light things because they're paying. Never mind, you said this thing, and I'm just saying it again. Kyle says it's a modern TV. It's all modern TV. Everything from House of the Dragon, everything is produced so dark now.
Agreed.
Yeah,
don't like it either.
Kyle goes on to say, I keep hearing about how the movies are darker, but the movies weren't this dark. No. I could at least tell which department crew members were in. Here, I can only see the yellow, orange security and engineering. Yeah, the operations officers are the only one. And PD's review doesn't arrive till Tuesday. Oh, yeah, not as great as My Ship is Dragging Mines, but that asteroid smack, loved it like it hurt. Or looked like it hurt. Yeah.
Looked like it hurt. Yeah.
Galaxy Quest, that's great. And Skogley says, I was very satisfied with this episode. I'll say it again for those who just showed up. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Appreciate it. Oh, there we go. Now give us a show based on the Roddenberry Bible.
That would be incredible.
Season 1 of Next Generation.
Yeah, I think that got better after they didn't have to abide so strictly to those rules. I thought the writing got better, and the shows were, I think, better after that.
There seems to be a little bit of writing and production backlash, not backlash, but alteration, loosening of the rules of the Bible as the shows continued after the passing of Gene Roddenberry. There was stuff on Enterprise where the jumpsuits for Enterprise, they made so, like, Gene Roddenberry was like, no pockets. You cannot have pockets on any of the uniforms. The jumpsuits had zippers with no pockets just because the costume designer was like, we're going to have so many pockets now. We are going to do as many pockets as possible because we've never been able to. So, yeah.
Yeah, but there was still a respect and acknowledgement of those rules being there in the background, and they definitely didn't ignore all of Gene's vision.
No, but it's not black and white either.
And like,
they definitely
had a bust of Gene Roddenberry there, and when they wanted to break the rules, they would put a blankie over it. But he was still there.
Yeah, I've heard that story too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things that we've talked about across many movies, television shows, sometimes the restrictions that are imposed based on time or money or what have you, those restrictions can be the spark of great creativity because you've got one hand tied behind your back and you got to solve a problem in a creative way. Yep. And so with that lack of the restrictions that Roddenberry put on, that made it so that we get something like war crimes and a mutineer becoming captain.
And some might say the restrictions give you way more creative writing because you have to work with them. And yeah, I think sometimes that's better.
I wish we would have gotten that though, because the first couple seasons are rough compared to the rest.
Yes, rough. You can't take your phasers into the past, and then Raffi's shooting holes in police car.
And the first couple of seasons of TNG is the same way. I wish we would have gotten that better writing, because the first couple seasons are not great.
Yeah, that was because they were trying to copy TOS using the Phase 2 scripts, and so they got kind of mired in not finding their own identity until they did.
I put forth the same argument that I have for people who are fans of the filth, and I would usher them going back to see the 735 in the same way that I think that if you are a fan of the Next Generation season 3 forward, and you pretty much omitted 1 and 2, go back and watch. They may not be great, but they are entertaining.
Yeah, they are.
Season 2 is very entertaining. Season 1 is
about half of season 1, actually, like at a moderate level.
Season 1's still hard for me. Season 2 I do like, though. But I mean, you have to be a hardcore. Sorry, I mean, you have to be a Star Trek fan to really get into that season 2.
I happen to be.
Yep.
Kyle says, I think that he is more or less retired since his son's death. Picard visiting with an android a few years ago might have opened up some old wounds, given that an android could have cured him. That's true.
Yeah.
And that's also something that, while we sort of hand wave seasons 1 and 2 of Picard, it is still part of the series. And no matter how much a lot of people think that the first 2 seasons shat the bed, they do inform the later storytelling.
Yeah.
And
for worse or for worser.
Yeah. La Serena on line 2.
The Macarena. Why didn't they just make it the Macarena, dude?
Yeah.
The new ship called the Macarena, and let's go.
It's true. Seasons 1 and 2 are still out there, so those robot Cthulhu aliens can arrive at any point to destroy everybody.
Ugh. Yes. Kyle Armstrong, I think the show Redemption would be a great spinoff.
Right.
And PD York says, nah, Discovery, you just have to be able to cry for 5 hours straight. Every person on Strange New Worlds has some traumatic backstory for some reason.
Yeah.
And in comparison, Strange New Worlds only has a few tragic character backstories. Yeah. Well, and it may be.
Yeah, I don't like that they gave her that kind of story, though.
I don't even know what it is. What did they do to Uhura?
I don't remember precisely, but her parents died or something. But I'd have to. You see, when I watch this stuff, I try to purge it as soon as I can from my memory.
Fair enough. I haven't seen it. They're doing a season 2, I think.
Oh yeah.
So I'll check it out. Finity says $10 say they never bother to address the fact that Picard is a skin job. They've done it twice so far.
You've already done it. Yep.
Hey, Captain Fandom Nerd.
So you can send your $10 in a super chat. Thank you very much.
Yes, that is Federation credits.
Yeah. The idea of Captain Finity sending a super chat—that's funny.
It's hilarious.
Oh, I don't know. It depends. I'm not going to say that.
I'm
not.
Anyway. One day.
Fandom Nerd says, in my opinion, this was the worst episode. It was fluff and filth. Fair enough, dude.
Sucks that it landed on you like that.
Well,
it was definitely fluffy. Yep.
It would. Well, yeah. I thought it was character resolution.
Yeah,
but with a lot of science that was played a little too fast and loose, or could have been tweaked.
Well, it was very simplified. Power. We need more power. Get me some power.
Hemorrhaging, bleeding, hematoma.
Right.
Gravity well. makes a lot of sense.
Yes. All of the science was explained by bleeding and hemorrhaging and ER terms.
PD York says Into Darkness has cool stuff and is a popcorn action flick. I like it for what it is, but yes, it's not great. Still better than Disco and Puke Hard. If you have an affinity towards it, then good for you. I still disregard that as part of the filth, because it's a terrible cover song in my opinion. And Jill, agreeing, would you care to agree with Captain Fandom Nerd?
Yes, absolutely agree that the episode was mostly fluff, especially the flashback scene. Which, yeah, I definitely.
And so here we go. Scogli says, was referring to the fact that they didn't just heal up his leg with what you would normally see on Star Trek. Yeah. Yes. I thought that they should have probably.
But to be fair, it's always been inconsistent, going all the way back. So from episode to episode, things change. You know, one thing could one episode it heals in immediately, and another episode it takes the course of days or weeks or months. It's never been very consistent.
One thing about the filth that I like is that it makes me appreciate characters like Pulaski, who knew how to put a stint in.
Right.
Or a splint.
Splint. I always mix up stint and splint. My apologies.
No, either one. She could do them both.
You're not a doctor. You're a bricklayer, not a doctor. PD York says the Wrath of Khan is great as a character film, but it is an action flick overall. A great action flick, but it's not super cerebral. It is the equivalent to what we are getting now with Picard season 3, in my opinion. If you were to consider that Spock doesn't die at the end of Wrath of Khan, would it be a good show or a good movie? If Spock survived Wrath of Khan, is it as good?
It isn't as powerful.
Right.
Because that's his ultimate sacrifice. The needs of the mini.
Right.
And all that.
But, and like the only thing, and I think I agree with you 100% PD York, but the only thing that makes it overall, it's a great character story. And I think that, yes, I think the more you scrutinize the Wrath of Khan, the more you can poke holes.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. But he's right. It's an action. It's a really good action flick.
Right. And it is true that the TV show was way more cerebral than the movies ever were.
Agreed. I agree. All of the movies, in fact.
Yes. PD York says to clarify.
The first one.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
that's not to say that every episode is, but on the whole,
like. Technically, the most cerebral of all the episodes was Spock's brain.
Technically.
I don't hate that episode too much. I do enjoy seeing McCoy operate brain surgery on.
It's still better. It's still better than the alternative factor. I'll tell you that.
I never learned how to speak hypothetical.
PD York says, "Oh my God, that was a unification. Good work." PD York says, to clarify, Beyond is the proper modern TOS movie. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, I agree.
It's the best series. It's the best one out of the 3 for sure.
Captain Finity says prosthetic opinion, more like it. Yeah, that's how I feel about Mike and Rich. They are my prosthetic opinion. Appion is here. Hey, Appy. Hail chat and hail panel. And PD York, for those 3, agree. 2009 at least set itself up in its own universe, and I think that's one of the biggest detriments to anything after 2017 is that they never established. They have never firmly come out aside from Picard.
The Kelvin timeline.
They've never said if this is it doesn't, and they've been coy about it.
I'll tell you what's a good way to be able to erase all of this garbage. If you just say everything post 2009 takes place in the Kelvin timeline.
That is the thing, because the courtesy that JJ gave us was the Kelvin universe, saying this is a different universe. Kurtzman has afforded us none of that, and as a result, Memory Alpha is a complete mess.
Yes, and yes, and even review channels, technical review channels like Trek Yards, who exclude, they started off by do incredible work in terms of their analysis of ships and timelines and everything like that. I've heard Commander Cockings on that channel just be like, well, it was on screen, and if we're going to adhere to Star Trek rules, canon is canon. And there are people who will just accept it, and I like to separate my peas and carrots.
Canon is canon, but this could be canon in the Kelvin universe, in the Kelvin timeline. I believe everything after 2000. I personally put everything that's come 2009 and after is Kelvin timeline. It's all
same. I just wish they would admit it.
Well, and again, with the guys over at Trek Yards, they've talked about stuff in terms of references and things that would only be accepted as being in the prime timeline because of the nature of the reference based on comparison with the Kelvin. But that's a whole other thing.
Right. I mean, there's a way that you could absolutely make this whole timeline just kind of disappear.
Sure.
And still be fine. Yeah. And pick up, somewhere, after Voyager. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
if and when, I won't even say if, I'll say when.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, everything will get rebooted. I'm not just talking about Star Trek, everything, right? If somebody says, they'll write in or they'll leave a comment. Do you think we'll ever? Yeah. Well, yeah, ever. Yes.
In the meantime,
if that's the choice of ever, at some point in the future, we're gonna get proper something or other, reboot or whatever. So yeah, it's just not going to happen anytime soon. I want it to happen yesterday, and unfortunately, it's just not
true. But in the meantime, we have the Orville.
There's plenty of others. Yeah,
right. Absolutely. Or For All Mankind, the expand,
for All Mankind, Foundation. But dude, so there are good things, parts of this timeline. So I'm not saying that if you like these shows that you shouldn't like these shows. If you like them, great, that's awesome. More power to you. I'm
good with that too.
I'm just saying that, you know what I mean. And there could be going forward, maybe they get more showrunners like Terry Matalas and give them more freedom to do better shows or more entertaining shows. I just kind of choose to put this in a different universe, Elseworlds or Kelvin timeline, however you want to say it.
For sure. And Kyle says this was a Wrath of Khan remix with TNG. Yes.
Yeah.
Appion says Mass Effect is a great sci-fi storytelling, but that's a video game. Yeah,
you're correct.
Yeah. And hang on a second here. PD.
Oh yeah, this season is also a video game. It's Game Portal.
Oh yeah, well they use one mechanic from it.
Yeah, knowing that Captain is like Shell.
PD York says Picard's character change in the TNG movies makes sense when you consider the trauma he went through in Generations. The movie grossly brushes it off with the happy ending. Huh. Well, yeah, we did over on Jill's channel. We did a review of Star Trek Generations, and I did say that it is a movie about death and loss. So I agree. Hang on.
What's your rating on that movie, Scotty? Out of 10 or 5?
If I like it. I think it's good. I don't remember specifically if we gave. I think I may. If we gave it a grade, I think I probably gave it a B.
Okay.
I gave that movie about a C. C+.
Yeah.
C+, I'll be generous with C.
I'm more. I think I'm more with Jill on that. It's middle of the road. It's not one of my favorite of the movies.
And I have
some people swear by it, and great, good on you. But it's for me, it landed kind of meh. Kind of right in the middle.
I still think that's the last characterization of the characters of the Next Generation show. And then you get into action movie Star Trek.
Yeah. I agree.
Hang on a second. And Jill says,
you're absolutely right. Picard is dead. But even still, replicant Picard is out of character. But he also insists on being Picard. So that's just the thing with this show, is everyone is out of character, and Terry is having fun doing his fan fiction.
I don't agree. I do agree that Picard is out of character just because of the nature of whatever that thing is now, right? That skin job Picard. But I don't the other characters I think are in character. In this time, I mean, you know what I mean? They can't be by virtue of how life works. can't be exactly like they were 30 years ago. So I don't see them as out of character, but except for Picard.
Okay.
Yeah.
PD says, I think if someone says, I think if someone says an F-bomb in an official capacity, they need to correct that behavior on the spot. Like Admiral Karen dropping it in Picard was unnecessary. Oh yeah, pure sheer fucking hubris. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to clarify for me, Picard equals seasons 1 and 2. Season 3 so far is earning its comm badge, so I refer to it as Picard. I
agree.
I've been referring to it as we used to call it
Spaceman.
I've been calling it Bald Spaceman because that seems to be the middle of the road thing to call it. But before, for seasons 1 and 2, we were calling it Star Trek Patrick Stewart. Picard seems like a often wrong soong. It's a lazy rhyme. Wrong soong, Picard. But yeah, I like P-hard. Right sound anyway.
P-hard.
Kyle says Code of Honor may have been intended to be lizard people, but it was an all black planet. Yikes. True.
And yes. the writer was summarily fired by Gene Roddenberry himself.
Which dope. That's great.
Right?
I just like
fired by the man.
It's not my fault that the notification sound on my phone is Lutan. I just like the sound, the timbre of his voice. Daniel's Hot Topics says, I remember Redemption, the Klingon War episode of TNG part 1 and 2. Pardon me. I was so excited for that episode back in the 90s, but when it came on, it did not have much action in it. It was disappointing. The Klingon episodes are a lot more political than you remember.
Yeah.
Daniel goes on to say, I thought that episode being a Klingon Civil War episode was going to have an actual Klingon war in it. If I wanted to see Klingon on the streets of Kronos with the disruptors shooting at each other, but no. True.
Yeah.
And PD says, I'm going to support whatever I want for whatever reason I want, and I will give my honest, unbiased take. Really not a fan of people who tell others what to do personally. Yeah, I am.
Agree.
Yeah.
Be free, P. York.
Be free. Daniel says we did not get a dialogue-heavy episode TNG speciality. It was terrible. Okay. PD says tribalism in fandom is okay as long as we always remember that we're fans and we respect each other's right to agree or disagree for our reasons. Roddenberry would call us all out to be better to each other.
I agree, but it's just not how the internet works, unfortunately.
Yeah. But PD, I have to, this is exactly.
Yes.
I'm with you. I'm standing by you shoulder to shoulder. Kyle says Alex Kurtzman is the worst. Secret reboot and bad hideout is awful. True.
Yes, absolutely. And Alex Kurtzman came from JJ. So it's just a whole big mess.
Yes. And yes. True. PD says, well, Disco is done after season 5.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's kind of disappointing that Disco got, or STD got 5 seasons and Enterprise only got 4. Kyle says, I gave up on Disco sometime in the 2nd season. I watched a little of the 3rd and 4th, and it's just Michael Burnham crying and saving everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for Jesus.
Yeah. Don't forget judging other people and trying to impose the will of 21st century intersectionality on
none of it
30th century. Well, I don't even know.
Sense.
PD says
that goes away, the better.
No, I knew it was time to stop when I was rooting for the villain to destroy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
PD says down with Kurtzman Trek, up with Terry Trek. Give me more Terry Trek, and Kyle agrees.
I'm happy with that so far. As long as he sticks the landing here with Act 2 and 3, then yeah. I don't know that he has to be the standard bearer, but more of this style, less of the season 1, season 2, all of Disco, and to a large extent, Strange New Worlds too.
And there are people who are dinging on Strange New Worlds the most.
I like it. I like it.
And
but I like it because of Anson Mount, I think, more than anything. But
yeah,
I got some enjoyment out of that season. I'm hoping that this second season is even better. Well, we'll see.
PD says, I can say I love the first 4 episodes because that arc is done, and I did end up loving it, and will regardless of how the rest of the season plays out.
Yeah. The first arc was well done, well executed. Obviously, we pointed out over the last 4 episodes holes and missteps or miscues and things like that. But on the whole, I think it was executed fairly well, better than any other Picard seasons so far. I know, like I said, it's a low bar, but
yes. And hang on a second, pardon me. Yes, this is and Star Trek V, which is aged like wine thanks to the filth, but still deck 145. Yeah. The only Strange New Worlds
that would have to be a Borg cube, right?
Oh yeah. The only Strange New Worlds episode I will watch is season 1, episode 1. The rest I tried but failed. But after episode 7, honestly, I don't think I made it past episode 1. And then I liked
episode 1. There's a couple other episodes I thought were good too. I didn't think I didn't think every episode was great, if I remember correctly. But there was 2 or 3 or maybe 4 out of the season that I thought were good, decent episodes.
Cool.
At least they tried to go back to metaphor and allegory in those trying a little harder than what we got in Disco.
And honestly, the only reason that I watched the finale of season 1 is just so I could see Anson Mount in the Rathacon uniform, to be fair. Daniel's Hot Topic says, I bet Worf will show up in the next episode in 7, and Worf could discuss and swap stories about the changelings they killed. Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be cool.
I would like to see Worf and 7 interact. Captain Finity says, again, lampshading is not addressing. It is addressing, but it's lampshading. It's drawing.
It's addressing. It's just not ranch or Italian.
Hey, I no longer care. Great, super.
Great.
Petey York says,
I don't think he watches anyway. So what? Okay.
It's just Petey York says, I fully accept that Into Darkness is crap. But I mean, I like Transformers and other popcorn movies too. So, and I want to. People may think it's crap, but it's definitely the best out of the 3. I keep saying that like a broken record, but it's absolutely true. Into Darkness, not Beyond. Into Darkness is the Rathacon ripoff.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got those confused.
No, fair enough. I just wanted to.
Into Darkness is the Kenneth. The
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict. Yeah, I did not like that one.
Although Alice Eve is cute as Carol Marcus, and you get Admiral RoboCop. There's a bunch of stuff in there, but it's almost like a bunch of things that were just dropped into a blender and chopped up.
Yeah.
Daniel says, did 7 kill the changeling? It fell off the ground and rippled a little bit, but it did not blow up or
it didn't disintegrate.
That's a good question.
Because it kind of flashed with the red eyes a little bit, and then we cut back to the bridge.
Oh, that's a good. Oh, sorry, that's a good point. Actually, she just let it get away very, very slowly.
We're talking about. I think we're talking about 2 different scenes. The one where the changeling goes into the wall. Yeah, she let that happen, but when the changeling is parading around as LaForge, she doesn't kill that changeling or that version of the changeling.
It doesn't blow up the same way that the one that Worf killed in the last episode.
Right. It didn't disintegrate, and the last we see it's kind of rippling, and then we cut straight to the bridge, and we never cut back to that. We never come back to that. So we'll have to see. I don't think it's dead.
Petey York says, without Spock dying in Rathacon, it would be 1 step above Into Darkness. Yeah, that's true. Daniel's Hot Topic says, Salty a week ago.
That one, but
don't read it?
Comment. No. You can read this one. I was just. saying the last comment. I think Rathacon is still amazing. I mean, with Spock's death makes it better, but it's leaps and bounds above Into Darkness. Either way.
Yeah. But I think that part of the reason that there is no emotional weight to Into Darkness is because you kill someone and then immediately bring them back. At least,
yes. The Genesis device is always going to be way better than Magic Tribble Blood.
Yeah. No, it was magic. It was magic Superman blood.
Mm.
It revived a Tribble. I know too much about this piece of shit.
Right.
Daniel says, Salty a week ago talked about the Star Trek doctors he would have taken care of him. He would have had the Holodoctor as his doctor, or Bashir, because he is a super smart and a eugenic. Who's my doctor? Who's your doctor? McCoy. I want to say Crusher just because of bedside manner. But... and
Ogawa is my doctor. Thank you very much.
Ogawa, good choice. PD or Dr. Solar.
Right.
I'll take a Vulcan. PD York says, to me, Star Trek is a multiverse anthology. Each new movie and show is arguably its own universe. Arguably, for sure.
Arguably. Yep.
Can't
argue with that.
Oh, wow. And Daniel says, me and Salty, we agree Pulaski is an awesome doctor and Beverly Crusher is incompetent.
I don't think Beverly Crusher is incompetent.
I wouldn't say incompetent.
Pulaski was a good doctor, though.
Yeah, I'm not going to take anything away from Kate. Kyle says, TOS movies, TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, and Filth in the Distance, I'm assuming. And oh my stars, let's see.
TNG and DS9 are above for me. They're at the front.
Sorry guys, I really enjoy that you guys are. Oh yeah, you guys are having a healthy conversation. PD says again, thank you, Alex Kurtzman. You made Generations better too.
Yep.
Yes. And another recommendation, Captain Infinity says, I think that The Expanse deserves credit for not having no plot holes and being excellent quality writing. Yeah,
I do too.
I still have to check it out, but it is on my list. Actually, for All Mankind is before that on my list, but it's definitely on my list. Daniel
For All Mankind is brilliant.
Picard can't be in the Kelvin timeline because they reference the Battle of Wolf 359 a lot. And the Battle of Wolf 359, I don't think will happen in the Kelvin universe. They also mention encountered Farpoint.
I mean, according to string theory, yes, it could absolutely happen in that timeline.
I don't want to see
millions of variations of variations. So
yeah, but I again, as if the USS Kelvin is the divergency of the universe, I would say as it gets farther and farther away, the less likely the universes will play out in the same way. Probably all the same people exist, but I don't think that their lives transpire in the same way, much in the same way the Kelvin universe does, or the Kelvin movies do with the original crew.
Yeah, and that's why it was a bad idea to begin with, and
it was the only way that they were going to be able to get the most iconic parts of Star Trek on the big screen at the time.
They should have fucking waited.
Yeah. Appion says, isn't Starfleet supposed to be professional and well organized? Yeah. It is.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
I don't know how the Titan is run when there aren't a bunch of people having a high school reunion aboard.
Right. And I hate to keep going back to this all the time, but it's true. This universe, Starfleet is not what it was pre-wars, the Dominion War. So it's not. We haven't been told what it is or why it is, or how, but it's just not the same. So I don't know.
I think the basic tenets of Starfleet still exist, and I agree with that.
I think the basic ones do. Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, like being good, optimistic, hopeful, exploratory, and
but you can have
diplomatic.
All that and still be in a dystopian aftermath, of a devastating war. You can still do that. You can be all those things still.
There is a level of returning to the ideals that were once suspended during wartime, if that makes sense. Then I think
I wish they would tell us definitively the state of Starfleet, the state of the Federation, and where we're at, because that would help. That would help inform what the hell we're seeing. If that's not the case, then you're absolutely 100% right. Why is everything dour? Why is Starfleet always the villain? It seems, they're the bad guy all the time. So these things have to be fleshed out at some point in one of these shows, or
Well, and also
I guess it doesn't. They don't have to. They
do. For me, they do.
They should. They absolutely should.
And I think we've all come to the consensus that we don't have any respect or regard for STD, and that's where most of the unprofessionalism and disorganization resides. And we really haven't explored anything post Voyager until Picard. And we're all under the impression that Picard season 1 and 2 sucks. So this is the first time we have 4 episodes in a post Nemesis world that is like this is it. This is all we've had so far. But, and again, if I'm going to judge a post Nemesis world on the one ship that I've seen interacting, the Titan seems like it's not a bad run ship, except that Shaw likes to be a dick to Seven.
No, and actually finally we get a crew that's up to the task, in this, because Disco we didn't, they're not the best. And I know I say this all the time, but as the flagship of the Federation's fleet, Enterprise, it should be the best and the brightest. And it always had been up until that show. So this is the first time since then we've gotten a crew that's actually good at their jobs, and professional. And I found that professional. I didn't find, at least I haven't found in these first 4 episodes that the crew of the Titan are unprofessional.
Well, and even in, I say Shaw is being a dick, but I wouldn't necessarily push it that far. He's certainly being strict. He's like a lot of people in the first episode were giving him parallels to Jellicoe in terms of his treatment of Hansen.
But fair. But at least we're getting they're exploring his motivations as well, right? Yeah. So at least we're getting that, and he's not just a douchebag because we need a douchebag here,
Right?
He actually has motivations. He has character depth, which is I think new for for New Trek.
Well, and in terms of him being a dick to Seven as well, how long has Seven been first officer, and when was she assigned? Like, we don't even know.
Well, and it's deep-seated hatred for the Borg, right? I mean, this deep-seated hatred for the Borg goes, obviously, we found out in this episode, all the way back to Wolf 359.
For sure. And Kyle, thanks everyone for accepting me into the group. I've had a lot of fun chatting with you all tonight. Well, thanks for being here, Kyle. You've brought a lot of good stuff, man. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Come back next week and bring more good stuff.
Well, and Kyle, and I, usually I save this till the end, but if you're a fan of the Trek, Jill's channel on Tuesdays and on the reruns, she's done all of the Orville. And in the process of reviewing in production order the original series, and I would love to see you there. And right, Jill?
Yes, thank you, Scotty.
Oh no, thank you.
And lots of other sci-fi too. I want to fill in all the blanks. I'll be busy for a while.
Your list is long. Daniel's Hot Topic says TNG Redemption Part 1 and 2 could have been a cool Klingon War episode with the Klingons on the streets. Oh, yeah, Batleths and Disruptors and building it on fire, but all we saw was talkie. Yeah. But if you want to see a Klingon War that's really off the hook, check out Way of the Warrior, because that is Klingon assault on both ship and ground troops. It's great.
And I'll tell
I
you,
love Redemption.
I actually really liked the portrayal of in DS9 way more than TNG.
Of the Klingons?
I'm sorry?
Of the Klingons?
Yeah. I thought the Klingons were we got way more involved with them as a society than even in I feel like they kind of glossed over in TNG, maybe not glossed over, but I don't know. I just feel like it were better represented in DS9.
You're right. The culture was more deeply represented, just like the Ferengi got a lot better in Deep Space Nine. Yeah. But I liked Redemption when Worf reunites with his brother and everything to deal with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Deal with that war or the impending war.
Yeah, I think that my least favorite two-parter though, I think, is Birthright.
See, I was going to say Gambit, but then I forgot about Birthright.
Yeah, Birthright's not that great, in my opinion.
The only good thing about Birthright from where I stand is that's the only time the Enterprise actually goes to Deep Space Nine. It would have been better if there was more crew integration and there was more of a crossover, but I did like seeing Picard and Crusher walking on the promenade, and I like Dr. Bashir. So
yeah.
P.D. York says, and as I said, with Disco going away, maybe we'll get our Roddenberry show. I'd rather have 5 to 7 Trek shows with variety than 5 to 7 of the same thing. We should probably have a conversation.
Okay. I was responding and I was like, hey, no one acknowledged my thing, but I was muted. Sorry.
What did you say?
No, I was saying, was that another Birthright? Was another Klingon episode? But I figured it out on my own.
Yeah,
it was a very bad one.
Yeah,
you were muted.
My least favorite one. Two-parter, anyways. There's some good two-parters in TNG.
Well, that was a weird Klingon cult.
Yeah, kind of weird.
And I think this goes back to Daniel's Hot Topic says, not today, that won't happen. Today, Roddenberry held the writers on a leash. They wanted to do so much, but Roddenberry would not allow it. After that, Rick Berman held the writers. That won't work today. I think that there were restrictions, and I think that if you adhered to the more of those, the
problem isn't the writer. I don't think the problem is the writers per se. It's the direction the writers are getting from the production company that's overseeing all of the new Trek on TV for Paramount Plus. That's where the problem starts. It starts from the top, and unfortunately, that's not going to change anytime soon.
Well, I think they're doing their best to rewrite the history of Star Trek. That's why we have 2 prequels. So,
yeah.
I think they're failing miserably.
I would, yeah.
And Appion says, isn't Worf stuck with Raffi? Yes.
Yeah.
We will see how that goes. But I'm hoping for a Raffi redemption. I know I'm in the minority.
Me too.
Daniel says today's entertainment is first, not someone's Bible rule. Number 1 is to entertain. They can show so much more now than they could back then. But that's the thing, is it like even the allegories of the 1960s, if you can't directly address racism or the Vietnam War because it was contemporary, that's where the creativity of the writing, the restrictions were the censors. The restrictions were what you could put on network television.
Right.
Yeah. And then
you don't as a writer, you don't need those restrictions to write allegorical stories or metaphorical stories. You don't have to have those. You don't have to have those imposed. You can impose them on yourself and write good Star Trek stories. It's easy, but you have to be supported by the people producing and creating the show. And unfortunately, I don't think they care enough.
Yeah, they don't care enough. I think you do if you want to make Star Trek, you have to look at it from that basis. Even if you do decide to break the rules, give it a reason and remember where you came from.
And hang on a second. Just still on the writing, and we're gonna be wrapping this up on the 3-hour mark, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. If I do not get to you, it's not because I don't like you, it's just because I'm tired. Daniel says, I was listening to a YouTuber and he was talking about how Ira Steven Behr was arguing with Gene Roddenberry, so Ira broke off and wrote Deep Space Nine and Berman allow it. Ira Steven Behr is a better writer.
Agreed.
Yeah, he is a good writer, but he was kind of funny at the convention. I went specifically to his panel to hear about how he wrote his stories, and he was like, I don't want to do this. I'm gonna buy everybody coffee and just sit with a few people to talk to, just a few people. So
really?
He's kind of an ass in real life, but he is a good writer, and I did enjoy Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do. Whoa, and this
Ronald D. Moore was. I think Ronald D. Moore was the best writer that come out of there. Of writers.
Yeah, and he still knows his stuff. If you watch What We Left Behind, the Deep Space Nine documentary, he gets in that writer's room and he just tears into it perfectly.
It was awesome.
And this is blasphemous, but Daniel, you're a friend of the channel, so I can't say anything negative here, or I can, but
he's right.
I'll be gentle, and I think, I would say, I've heard anyway. Daniel's Hot Topic says Ira Steven Behr is a way better writer than Gene Roddenberry. I have heard that is relatively, like, from people writing on the original series.
But we wouldn't have Star Trek without Gene Roddenberry, and Gene Roddenberry's strength wasn't that he could do it alone. It was that he relied on the talents of everybody around him in order to create Star Trek, like Gene L. Kuhn and Dorothy Fontana and everybody else.
Yeah. And it's but it's one of those things that, in terms of the concept and in terms of the world and establishing everything, a great visionary for creating that. But I've heard some people say, if you want a god creature, then you go to Gene Roddenberry.
Praise the creator.
So you get
the great bird of the
great
gods.
Yes,
as coined by Justin. What's his name?
Robert Justman.
Thank you.
Yeah, Justman. The Justman.
He is. Daniel's Hot Topic says Gene Roddenberry would not allow many things on TNG, which would have made it better show, like Conflict of War. Thankfully, Ira Steven Behr came up with DS9 and Section 31. I can't talk about Section 31 at this time because it would take me forever.
Yeah, I know, right? And I would rather not have a Section 31 at all.
Ditto. I am not a fan. Appion says, I stopped watching The Expanse after Thomas Jane's character left the show. He was my favorite character. I need to go back and watch the rest. Yeah.
The rest is good. I do think that the first couple seasons are better, are the best, the strongest. But it's that way with a lot of TV shows.
Well, and that's the one that sort of incorporated the cyberpunk aspect more into it, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's the whole. I mean, there's really cool aspects of that show in every season. So, I mean, it's solid. It's one of the best hard sci-fi shows we've had in decades.
Oh, and Daniel says Gene would not have allowed DS9, Section 31, or the Dominion War. Thanks be to Ira Steven Behr.
Correct. Yeah.
Dominion War, totally thumbs up. Section 31, not a fan. And actually in the TNG movies, they were going towards Starfleet being corrupt, and if the movies would have continued past Nemesis, it would have been the same. I think one of the things, Gene Roddenberry was dead set against the conspiracy in Undiscovered Country. To the point that he was sabotaging the script, saying you can't do that to Saavik, even though Saavik was a character created by Nicholas Meyer.
When the little weird alien bug things take over Starfleet, wasn't that under Roddenberry's watch?
That was under Roddenberry's watch.
Yeah, so that doesn't make sense. That's weird.
But it was an outside force as opposed to Star.
Oh,
Like
I see. I see what you're saying.
I don't think that it was intended originally. I don't think it was even intended to be an outside force. And they were like, no, Starfleet wouldn't. There's nothing wrong with Starfleet. No, you can't do anything wrong with Starfleet. And that's when they invented the bluegills.
I gotcha.
And that's what I'm wondering what they're doing with this season 3 is. Oh, hey, Starfleet was bad, but it was because they're all changelings.
I still don't understand why you think that they're bad in season 3 of Picard.
You don't know? Well, I gave you all of the answers.
No,
yes.
You feel,
one of the reasonings is that Jack and Beverly felt that things were so bad that they had to go out and go gallivant around the galaxy to help save people, that so Beverly couldn't feel like she could trust Starfleet to help her.
Okay.
And so Starfleet's bad because they won't help the former chief medical officer of the flagship of the Federation with,
Starfleet doesn't know, Jill.
It sounds like she didn't even ask for help.
She did, and then she was attacked by changelings. Right. So she doesn't know anything. No, Starfleet doesn't know because Picard didn't tell Starfleet that they were going to go usurp the Titan. Everything that has happened so far in the presence
for
of
20
Picard,
years.
Wait, hang on. In the presence of Picard and Crusher in this show has not had anything to do with Starfleet. In terms of what's going on with Jack, she's run away from Starfleet because she is in possession or in the charge of Jean-Luc Picard's child, and she's not sure if she can protect Picard's child. And while, yes, I agree with you that she does say that she is taking care of the worlds that Starfleet has forgotten, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is an apathy coming from Starfleet. That means that there are outlying worlds, whether they be within Federation space or without, that require assistance. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a distance between them, between Starfleet and these worlds. Some of them may not be Federation worlds. Like, again, this is a whole thing that I do get everything that has come before season 3 of Picard that says Starfleet is evil.
Yes. So and that's the basis that is not ignorable, really. It's still there.
But saying it's a continuation, again, then you know what, you're right, because I can't argue with that because it is part of the baggage that we've had to deal with the filth. And that's part of the reason why there is such a strong reaction to the filth, is that you're right.
Yeah, it's absolutely there, but I don't see them leaning into that.
They don't have
to an extent to where it's like, oh my God, it's a glaring,
Well, it is pretty glaring because in the first episode, Starfleet was totally fine with covering up for the murders, so that Raffi could be the one to solve the issue.
We don't know because we have not seen the entire story. They may have been attributing it to that Romulan guy so that they cover up the fact that the more terrifying weapon, which they've alluded to in the previous episode, was stolen.
I'm glad you thought about all this, Scotty.
We do not know the continuation of the story. And until we find the conclusion of who stole the portal gun, we don't know what the bigger thing is that they stole. It could be the little cube with Moriarty in it.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know. And so that's... but I do, and that's, again, this is Jill, this is why we're friends, and this is why I find the conversation absolutely sparkling, is because when we get to season 3, everyone has been saying, shoo everything that has come before this, but if you are a fan and you're going to say things, or if I'm, and not you, the royal you, people are going to say, canon is canon, and it's like, fine, then you've established through Section 31, in Disco, through everything that happened with sheer fucking hubris, and like we've established that Starfleet is a generally negative organization. Even if you take the route of Admiral RoboCop from Into Darkness, then yes, everything that has been presented since 2009 sways towards Starfleet as a corrupt organization.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, yes, absolutely.
And I agree with you. I don't like that at all either. I can't argue with you because it is something that the filth has painted with a broad brush, that because it's a military organization, it must be evil.
Which is,
not true.
Of course, it's not true.
Well, I mean,
because Starfleet was always.
It's absolutely true in this context.
Right. But again, if you're telling a Star Trek story, Starfleet is not evil. That's just one of the rules of war. It's not supposed to be, not in a Star Trek story.
Yeah. No, there are going to be bad admirals, and there's going to be some individuals who mess up, but Starfleet as a whole should be trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yeah.
So.
And we'll see. And I think at least for the stories that are being told in this season, it looks like it's going to be a infiltration. That's just my guess, right? But so it's not Starfleet as a whole, but it's, we've seen that before where Starfleet is infiltrated, bad things happen.
Yes.
Yes. And as we are at 3:05,
I need to get through these.
I do want to. Oh, my stars! I am shocked. Shocked, I will tell you. There have been 13 votes in the poll. And I'm going to close that poll now. And the 13 votes in the poll.
What was the question?
Will you watch episode 5? And 76% of the 13 votes said yes. And 23% said no.
I think that's the most positive we've had so far in our polls.
Yes. This is very true. And so
I'll be watching episode 5 for sure.
Thank you so much, Kyle, saying I'll check each of you kids check each of you kids out. And Finity says, yeah, Kyle, you really triggered a thought process. Thank you. Daniel's Hot Topic says, yeah, DS9 season 4 episode 1 Way of the Warrior was so good. I love that episode. A lot of TNG fans are upset with that episode, saying it's not Roddenberry's vision, the same as the Dominion War.
Really? I love Way of the Warrior. I've never heard anybody say that.
Yeah.
About that episode.
I can see the perspective of it not being, but
yeah.
They made up.
I really don't.
And then Daniel says that's why they were good. It's always entertaining to find a Star Trek fan who doesn't like Gene Roddenberry. Hey, drug addicted sexist. I love him. Kyle Armstrong says, Definity, oh, Captain, my captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack. The prize we sought is won. The port is near. The bells I hear. The people all exulting.
Nice.
And Petey York says that he is on Twitter. Ooh. I'm assuming at Petey York. Petey York says, got a I'm totally not insecure about feeling superior blue check and everything. Well, as long as your subscription is up to date.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about that is kind of, well, okay, we're not here to talk about Twitter, but now I can't use my cell phone as authentication secondary. It's without the blue check mark. They're taking away functionality to make people want to get the stupid check mark, and I'm not going to do it.
Me either. I didn't have one before, and I don't have one now. I am a verified nobody. Daniel's Hot Topic says, Star Trek shines when it ignores Roddenberry and makes Star Trek a reflection of our world today, just projected into the future. That is why DS9 was so good. Yes. And
I will have a complete live stream about that at some point.
But also, if you wanted to, you could say that STD is so terrible because of the world that we live in.
It is. So there's a Star Trek way to do it.
Yeah.
And then there's a new Trek way to do it. Don't do the new Trek way.
Yes, that's
do
where
the Star Trek way.
They wag a finger.
Yeah. Don't tell people what to think. Teach them how to think.
Yeah, I like that.
Petey York says, okay, but with all the other shows that came back and stayed to the original formula, it does work. I liked Roseanne when Roseanne was on the show. I liked Beavis and Butthead. Okay. Sweet. Which is and this, okay. Daniel says the writers had to fight to get the episode with the bug people who possessed people. Conspiracy was a good episode, but they had to fight for it, just like the Best of Both Worlds. That's interesting. I never thought about Roddenberry's involvement in the Best of Both Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Although he was in, especially through through Star Trek, the original series, he was against the technological overthrowing of man. So, see The Ultimate Computer. Kyle says, we don't yet know how long the changelings have been going into the Federation.
So he was against the Borg?
Sorry?
So he would have been against the Borg? Didn't he? He was around.
No. I'm saying, no, I was just curious about it. When when Daniel brought up the Best of Both Worlds, would we have not got it? I think that that's actually, he probably wouldn't have liked Shelby.
Right.
But that's, aside from that, I think it would have been fine. But I don't know, Gene. I did too. I liked Shelby a lot. Elizabeth Dennehy. I can't believe that is Brian Dennehy's daughter. Kyle Armstrong says, Jill, would you like to read this response to you?
Sure. We don't know yet how long the changelings have been going into the Federation. Let me make this bigger. Perhaps that's the reason why the Federation abandoned the Romulans in season 1 of Picard. That could potentially be what Terry's doing to repair the crap.
Maybe. Yeah.
Potential. There's potential there.
Oh, Daniel's Hot Topics. The sad thing I hear is that the Best of Both Worlds would have been a start of a Borg invasion, where the rest of the series, they would have been at war with the Borg. But nope, Rick Berman would not allow it because Roddenberry wouldn't. And Roddenberry would not have wanted a Borg war, so it was not allowed. Sad.
So here's the thing. I don't know at the time. You got to put this back in the time that it was coming, that it came out too. And it does play, maybe not a large part, but it does play a part in how you view these the episodes, TV in general, right? I don't know that a protracted kind of arc like that would have worked. I know a lot when they tried it in Enterprise, with Zindi. I mean, the backlash was heavy. Like, dude, a whole season of an arc. Because it was so new. That concept was so new to what had been, episodic television up until that point, at least in this franchise. I don't know that would have. Yeah, it might have caused the same kind of backlash that Zindi did, later on in Enterprise.
I can't speak to Enterprise, but in regards to Best of Both Worlds, I think you may be mixing up some things, Dan, because from what I understand, because of the nature of the scooping of the colonies at the end of season 1 in Neutral Zone, there was a plan to have a season-long arc in season 2 that would gradually introduce the Borg and them be the primary threat throughout season 2, but they couldn't do that because of the writer's strike.
I remember that. Now I remember that too. Yeah.
And then with Enterprise, in terms of the Zindi arc, I think the reason that people had a backlash against that was prequel syndrome. People were like, how is this a thing if we've never heard about this in any other Star Trek?
No. Well, it was directly like, we don't like this. I mean, the forums were lit about how people hated the fact that there was a season-long arc. Now, there's a difference between doing... long arcs, because they had done, 3 or 4 episode arcs, but episodes that would be around an episode that had a beginning, middle, and end, right? But it would be almost like the mythos of a let's just grab one out of the air, X-Files. So you had the X-Files mythos that kind of ran behind, but was above and beyond and inside of everything that kind of went on. But you had episodes that wrapped up, beginning, middle, and end. So we had that going on, but not for whole seasons of just one protagonist or antagonist the whole time. So I don't know if they were planning on doing that, or if the plan was just make them the bad guy. We still go on missions that don't involve the Borg, but they're just always kind of there every couple of episodes. Because I don't know the plan. That's the first I heard of them wanting to do that, which is interesting. At that time, you didn't usually have season-long arcs like that where every episode was, like the Xindi in season 3 of Enterprise. That was new.
Well, and apparently Kyle says Roddenberry was alive and he still didn't want it. And overall, I'm not upset with how things turned out. Me either.
No, yeah, I think it turned out great.
And Kyle says TNG is not a perfect series, but it has a general good consistency. After season 3, they moved to character of the week episodes, which saved the whole thing. Yeah, as opposed to Alien of the week, it was character of the week, which was great, and guest star as well.
Yeah, guest stars can help make an episode. That's what
absolutely. Major Winchester, Major Winchester from MASH was on one. He was Timothy. PD York says
Half a Life.
Yeah. One of the best Loaxana Troy episodes, if not the best. PD York says, and they aren't removing feature. Oh, this is a Twitter conversation. So PD York, you and your tweets. And I am going to cap her off here simply because, Daniel, you speak my language. Shelby was hot. She was yummy. And she made me happy when I looked at her. True. And she, she filled out a uniform well. I enjoyed it.
Not Tashi's sister, but close. Very
Ashara was pretty hot. Ashara was
pretty hot. She was a great officer too. And she presented a great way to introduce conflict into Star Trek without it being dumb. It was intelligent.
Ambition versus a seasoned commanding officer. It was great. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you so much to Comic Relief Crusader, PD York, Kyle, Daniel's Hot Topics, Captain Infinity, and Lemon was here, and Appion. Thank you so much for being here, Appion. Kyle Armstrong. I'm just sort of off the top of my head, but Kyle Armstrong, Mr. Armstrong, Commander Armstrong. Thank you for being here. Lemon Pie, thank you so much. And let's as we continue to scroll, it's so good that you guys Edge of Time was here to remind us of the filth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edge Time. That is a good service.
It's always good as the disclaimer in the 23rd century or the 25th century filth.
I think Spider-Man was here.
Canadian Spider-Man was here, which is awesome. Matt G, as always. Thank you so much for being here. You owe me $1. Scogli, thank you for being here, Scogli. And if I missed you, it's because I'm tired and dumb. Dalek, thank you, Dalek, for being here, and thank you for taking some time to stop by. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning of the show. Totally on me. And thanks for sticking around. Jill.
Yes.
Do you have anywhere that you hang out on the internet that you would like to discuss?
Sure. I have a channel, Antiderivative where I talk a lot about science fiction, including Star Trek, but I talk about the original series Star Trek episodes. And the next one we're going to talk about is the first really big Klingon story, Errand of Mercy. So that's going to be super fun. And I also talk about other sci-fi and movies on Fridays, like UFO, and I reviewed all of the Orville and lots of movies like Forbidden Planet. And this Friday will be The Rocketeer. And tomorrow. Oh man, I gotta work.
I know, right?
That'll be the morning, I guess.
Yes, that'll be morning coffee for me as well.
Mhm.
Steve, what do we got going on tomorrow?
Tomorrow on the Phantasmagorium show channel, noon Pacific, Kat is going to review a double feature of 65 and Scream 6. And then immediately following that at 1 p.m. Pacific time, her and I will do Lightsabers, Blasters, and Droids, which is our review of Mandalorian season 3, episode 2. I think 2, yeah.
I believe so. And also, just a dovetail from Kat's review of Scream 6.
3.
Don't forget to check out. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
To dovetail off of Scream 6, go check out our good friends over at Cinema Gulp, where Kat and Terrier were with Ben and John as they discussed the entire Scream saga. And so please check that out. Also, check out The Rocketeer and check out the 65 Scream and the Mandalorian. And Kyle, you don't owe me a
super chat. Thank you.
You don't owe me $1.
Dr. Armstrong, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming around, man.
Thanks for being here, Dr. Armstrong.
And we'll see you next week.
Yes, we will. Whose turn is it to close the hailing frequencies?
Hailing frequencies closed.